National Library of the Netherlands.
Hello.
Right, I think that's us sorted. So, Kaz, you're up first. We're just assembling our team of chairs, but I can tick you off the list at least.
Yes.
And I can see Melinda. I can see Daniel. But we'll just wait for Kai to join us because he'll be leading us through proceedings. Oh, I should change my name, shouldn't I? Okay.
I forgot to download the wee Miss iPress background.
Oh.
I shall have to do it for later when I'm co-chair.
Absolutely. One must be on brand.
It's kind of DPC green behind me anyway. So.
It is. Okay, here we've got some more people joining us. Welcome, everybody. We'll be taking a break until 1:15. So go and refresh your drinks, stretch your legs, get a breath of fresh air while we organise ourselves. Hi, co-chair Alison Campbell.
Oh, hello. Tech lead. All going fine, Sarah?
Seems to be, yeah, everything going to plan. Just
Excellent.
assembling our next stream. Yep, you're up first, Cassandra. Have you got slides to share?
I do, yeah.
Okay. while we're just organising ourselves, could I ask you just to pop your name and your organisation in your in the name bit? We've joined a new stream, so you might have done it in the first one, but it looks like it might have forgotten that information in this one. So if you wouldn't mind, then we'll know who you are. That'd be great.
Morning, peeps.
Morning, Paul.
Hello, everybody. Can you hear me?
Morning,
Yes,
Kai.
we can. So where's the dog, Sharon?
They're in the other room.
Oh, mine is on my lap.
Oh,
Oh, mine cannot be trusted to stay quiet.
Well, there's that too, yeah.
Kai, you'll be pleased to know that we've got our speakers all assembled. So everybody is. Oh, hang on. Actually, that might not be quite true. Oh no, we've got all the speakers present and correct.
Yeah, let me close the window to reduce noise. All right.
I apologize in advance for any banging that might be happening. I've got people on the roof placing it.
Oh, Barbara, thanks for clarifying it on the chat. This is stream 2, yes.
If you think you should be in stream 1, however, the link is back in the box. And if you think you should be in stream 3, the link
Yeah, that's a fairly
back
good
in the
idea.
box.
Thanks, Sarah.
And just for people who do want to be in any of the streams, there's the collaborative notes link for you there as well.
Wait, I'll have to adjust my audio settings because your voice is not clear enough.
Oh, I beg your pardon. Well, can you hear everybody else? Because I'm not going to be speaking very much anyway.
Sarah, now it's brilliant. Audio is brilliant now. I hope that it's fine for the rest of you too. Can you clearly hear my voice?
Perfectly. I think we're
Right.
good to go.
No, we only have to wait for my co-chair, right?
She's here. She's standing by. Alison Campbell.
Alison, I thought I was doing this with
No, I'm a replacement for William.
your replacement. I see. Yeah, right. Yeah. Sorry.
Sorry, I should have made that clear. Yeah, so I'm also with the DPC. So
Oh, I see.
I'll be looking out for the questions.
All right. So then it's 10:15. What do you think? Should we start, or should we wait for say two more minutes?
I think let's get going.
Yeah, let's get going. All right. I feel very honored to be that you asked me to chair this session, because it's the first time I take part at in IPRES, first time ever. And please never mind my faulty English. I don't practice it too often, so from time to time you'll be delighted by what I say. Anyway, we have a really great panel of speakers for this stream. We've got a packed program, so please, Cassandra, could you introduce yourself, and then you will have 8 minutes to present your slides or your speech, and then we'll have a short discussion. And in order to stay with a time rooster, you'll be the next one will be Barbara Searman, and I'm really looking forward to all of you. And I hope this will be a nice session in stream 2.
Right. I'll just share my screen now as I
Yeah.
have live. So my name is Cassandra O'Connell, and I'm head of the IFI Irish Film Archive. So we have been working in digital preservation for a number of years now, and I thought instead of talking about our general activities, it would be really interesting. You can hear my dog in the background joining in. It would be interesting to talk about some of the educational activities that we've done, because we've learned so much from other people, and we've tried to give a little bit back into the community. So for those of you who might not be familiar with us, the Irish Film Institute is the national cultural institution for film in Ireland, and we're based in Dublin, but I'm in my kitchen today because we're in lockdown again. And our main activities are exhibiting film, preserving film through the archive, and then education through our education department. So, here we go. We recently wrote an education policy, and it wasn't something that we'd done before. The reason that we had to do it was because we were applying for accreditation under the Museum Standards Programme of Ireland, which is similar to the UK Museums Accreditation Programme in that it uses the Collections Trust Standard Spectrum. So part of that was, as I said, we had to formulate an education policy and plan. And initially we thought, we don't really do any education activities. That's what our other department in the IFI, the education department, do. And we initially submitted some of their work, but we were told, no, go back and actually look at what you do. You'll be probably quite surprised at how much educational work you do yourself. And then we realized that we did have our own education initiatives and our own target audience. That would be the basis of this plan. So the aims and objectives of our education policy, although it doesn't specifically focus on digital preservation is a very large component, purely because of the work that we do is practically all digital now. So the main objectives are to deliver formal learning initiatives to equip students with digital preservation skills, to deliver peer-to-peer learning through workshops, lectures, and academic presentations, and then also to give opportunities to students to get practical skills in an archival environment, which we think is really important. And we have a broad range of audiences that we feel our education policy hits. So obviously there's the usual researchers from graduate to postgraduate level. There's people who come maybe more into lectures and seminars and workshops that we give on our work. There are some IFI-led third level courses, which I'll talk about later. We give work experience and internships to students from media studies and archiving courses, as well as giving workshops and talks. And then staff from other cultural organisations that we would advise and project partner with, and members of the digital preservation and film archiving communities in a number of different ways. The workshops, so the methods are workshops. We hold moving image preservation workshops, both internally and externally. And in recent years, they've included, quite structured ones for the Heritage Council of Ireland as part of that accreditation scheme that I mentioned. Frame training, which was in conjunction with RTE, our national broadcaster, and INA in France. And then we had a major workshop for the Archives and Records Association at PRONI, so the Public Record Office of Northern Ireland. And as I said, we also have internships, so they will be from third level colleges in Ireland, but also through the Erasmus programme. And also we would take in people from peer organisations who want to get some kind of hands-on experience with digital workflows. And we found that to be really, really beneficial. Our formal training is something that we've developed in recent years, and we devised a master's module in media archiving in digital preservation in Maynooth University, and we teach this every year. and set an assessment of a personal archiving project for them, to really get people to think about digital preservation and the various different components. And a lot of your organisations whose names I see here, we would pull on your resources. And we also have provided training with the International Federation of Film Archives. We also want to contribute academically, so we would publish a lot of our findings and different articles about different projects and areas of our work where we've discovered a new way to do something, and I've listed some of the publications there, but I won't read them out because you can read as well as I can. And I suppose one of the biggest areas that we really have found benefit both for us and for the wider community is professional community engagement. So we try to work with as many partners as possible. We realize that, you know, we're not reinventing the wheel. And if we learn something, there's a good chance that it'll be of use to someone else, just in the way that we have learned so much from others within the community, and that has in the past brought us to the DPC and others. We collaborate with a wide range of partners and organisations on preservation and digital preservation activities. So that would include national cultural institutions, other archives who wouldn't be as familiar with digital archiving processes, and then just people who have collections and need to have them looked after. So to round up, I suppose, what was the benefit of actually sitting down, looking at our activities and having an education programme and an education plan? Well, it helped us to develop a coherent approach to our existing education activities, and we hadn't really thought about it. We'd always had the impulse to share and educate. So this was a really good way to kind of consolidate that. We understand how we can increase digital and AV preservation skills in a worldwide group. So we know how to target the training and the educational activities that we do. Explaining to others helps us to understand and refine our own workflows and activities. There's nothing like having to explain why you do something to somebody else to make you really think about what you do it and its importance. Really importantly, because there are so few opportunities for people to learn our kind of digital preservation in Ireland, training really helps us to develop the potential colleague pool and ensures a higher level of practical knowledge in the community in Ireland. So we've actually hired a number of people over the years who've been through our internship programme, and that's been really, really beneficial because it's hard to get people that will be familiar with the work that we do. It helps us to build strong relationships and learn from others through collaboration. So even if we're teaching people, that we're going to learn a lot from them, raises our profile, creates goodwill. And finally, maybe not the most important, but it was important to us, we received full accreditation through that MSPI scheme. So we were delighted with that.
Thank you, Cassandra. Is that your talk?
It is. I'm bang on time.
Please clap, everybody. Thank you. Thank you very much. Are there any questions you'd like to ask Cassandra? If none, I'd love to hear something about how you can concisely see every opportunity for education in the film archives business worldwide, because we are in fact setting up a digital movie archive. We've had an audiovisual archive for about 20 years, and now we are enforcing the digitization of stuff. And I didn't really know that there are so many opportunities. Do you know a platform where you could find those opportunities worldwide?
In terms of training, there are a number of courses that you can do, and the frame training that I mentioned there is a European initiative, and it's done on a modular basis. So I can find the details and put it up in the chat box later if that suits.
Excellent, thank you.
I think there's another question there. Am I right? Oh yeah, Melinda. Yeah. Did you create
She asks if did creating the formal education policy make you change your approach, or was it more a consolidation of what you already do?
It did both. So we consolidated the work that we did, but it made us really think about who our target audience was, and it also made us realize that there were things that we already did that had education benefit if we had just changed them slightly. So for instance, when we were doing tours and we were doing talks, I suppose, about the work that we do, we were able to really look at what the outcomes would be and who the different target audiences were, and then we were able to adjust the way that we delivered that information, I suppose. So it didn't completely change our approach, but it definitely made us think more about who we were trying to reach.
Thank you, Cassandra. We're lagging behind, so I'm handing over to Barbara Searman now. I make acquaintance with very many people right now, and I didn't introduce myself, but I'll stay a stranger for the next talk because we're lacking so much time. Barbara, go for it, please.
Yes, I'm trying to find my. I'm sorry.
I'm an archivist, so I'm doing the introduction right now. I'm an archivist at the State Archive of Baden-Württemberg to the southwest of Germany, near Bavaria, that is. So that's me, and now it's Barbara's time.
Yes, you see my screen and you hear my voice, if it's okay. Well, you heard my name is Barbara Searman, and together with the colleagues you see on the screen from the Netherlands, by the way, I want you to give a brief overview of our framework, the big picture of digital preservation. In the Dutch Digital Heritage Network, we developed project deliverables related to policies, to costs, to solutions, what we call tools and supportive applications. But we soon realized that in real life, these topics are interrelated and will influence each other. So we came to this framework. As an organization, you have an ambition to introduce or to improve digital preservation. And you will likely do this, guided by a mission, accountability, and a vision as described in your preservation policy. And within an existing context of solutions, your organization, your technological environment, your resources available in your organization, and within the limits of your budgets, you want to realize your ambition. This is your context where all the pieces are related to each other, usually in a more complex way than pictured on this slide. And in those cases where the ambition calls for a decision that is impacted by and also impact these elements, a thorough analysis before is required. It's not so difficult to just pick something, often based on the price of it, but it's more complex to choose a solution that's the best fit for the policies in place, the current organization, and the available budget. And we do that via an impact analysis, and we will talk more about that later. The first step is to describe your ambition and to identify the related context of your own organization. And for this, you will do the impact analysis on the context of your current organization in the relation to your intended actions, and those can be large or small. What's the impact analysis about? We identify 4 areas you need to take into account. It's about the quality of your organization. It will take into account the vulnerabilities of your organizations, your weaknesses, but it will also identify the opportunities realizing your ambition might offer your organization. And as you can see, costs are part of the analysis, but they are purposely placed in the last position because they shouldn't be in the lead. The next step is to identify available solutions to realize your ambition. You will determine how each of the possible solutions will map against your organization, your technological environment, and the related resources. Let's assume the organization prefers to develop their own solution. Again, you will do this impact analysis to find out about the consequences for your organization if you realize your ambition by developing your own solution. And the impact analysis will show you the effect on the quality of your organization, but will also tell you whether the solution will help you to overcome vulnerabilities in your organization. And perhaps, will it offer new opportunities? And what about the costs? So the outcome of this exercise might be that you will need to change the foundation, for example, your policies, or that the solution will require changes in your organizations, different technological platforms, more people, whatever. And after this exercise, the organization will have a good description of the ambition, the boundaries of the decision related to the preservation policy and other elements, and the results of the impact analysis, the pro and cons for the organization, for a possible way to realize the ambition, in this case, to do it yourself. But in the next step, we will analyze alternatives. Generally speaking, organizations have three basic options to choose from in preserving their digital content in the long term. Either they do it themselves, or they engage with services of an external commercial service provider, or they form partnerships with other organizations. And the umbrella term we have coined for this is DOC, do it yourself, outsourcing, or cooperate. And in the case of an organization with an internal focus, we assume that it has a preference for do it yourself, as we saw in the slide before. But the impact analysis might show that this is not the optimal way to go. And the organization might decide to look at the other DOC options. Let's assume the organization wants to explore other options like outsourcing or cooperation. In that case, both the impact analysis for outsourcing and cooperate is needed. And in the schema, what you now see, this is the assessment phase. You see that on the bottom, balancing the outcomes of the impact analysis you have done. And the assessment will also show whether there are changes necessary if the organization wants to realize its ambition. Changes, as I said before, in policies, technology use, or in the organization, if dependent on the solution that will be chosen. Hence the arrow back. You see on the bottom the arrow, either choice will influence the blocks on the left side. I hope it's for you on the left side. As the Dutch Digital Heritage Network, we think it's important for our partners in the network to use the DOC approach in finding solutions. We all work hard to offer solutions for our colleagues, and we strive to improve the collaboration between organizations. So we really think that organizations should consider cooperation in a network as an approach, and in the Netherlands, but also with international networks. Whichever DOC option an organization will choose, it will affect several aspects of the current situation. The basic principles, like the policies or the resources on the left-hand side. For example, an organization that opts for do-it-yourself will need to invest in staff resources, whereas a decision to outsource or cooperate with other organizations will require more organizational capacity and skills on the part of the staff already employed by the organization. In other words, each option throws up different questions and generates different effects in relation to the organization, technology, and resources. And it shows that cost cannot be the only driver. This means adding a number of new dimensions into the model that require exploration analysis, and that's what you now see on the slide. To summarize, any strategic choice must be well informed, and the big picture framework helps organizations to ensure that they follow a carefully considered systematic process in arriving at their choice. providing information on relevant factors and arguments at the same time. The impact analysis will support the broader focus on the implication for the organization, the pros and cons. The final assessment of the 3 ways of developing a solution via the doc, combined with the results of the impact analysis, will lead to a well-informed decision. And this slide will show you the contact details. You can send us an email and a reference to an article we wrote about this. Unfortunately, it's in Dutch, but we already have the English translation and it will be available soon. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Barbara. And I've already seen a question on the chat. Do you have a recommended capability or maturity analysis method for an organization to carry self-assessment and choose a DOC option? That's what Raifo Rusaleb asks you.
Oops, that's a big question. Well, we have in the Netherlands, we use the SCORE model for a self-assessment, which is a lightweight set of, I think, 70 questions. And it's an exercise you do in your organization, and at the end you receive a kind of spider diagram where you can see what are the weak and strong areas and what you need to improve. So we see this as a first step in doing a self-assessment, and especially if you do that with all the people involved in your organization, it's a very nice exercise. We suppose everyone is honest in their answering on the question, but it gives a nice insight in how people in your organization think about their own maturity and the rest of it. So, that's the SCORE model. You can find it on the Network of Digital Preservation. The other thing, how to choose a doc option. Yes, what I try to say is do the impact analysis, and the outcome will be, well, for example, if I want to collaborate, but I don't have staff with time to collaborate because collaboration costs time, although no travel is required nowadays, so it might cost less time, but it still costs time. So you need to have the resources to do that. So if you do the impact analysis, at least you have an overview about the effect of each choice, I think.
Well, thank you very much, Barbara. In fact, we're 5 minutes behind. Okay, we still have a means to kind of bridge into the next session. But please, Andrea Guthals, could you two resolve the question of Andrea in the chat, please? And I will carry on. Sorry. And the next one on the list are Melinda Hornton and Sharon McMeekin. No, sorry, Sharon McMeekin from the National Archives and the DPC. And I'm looking forward to hear from you. You started screen sharing, but we don't see a picture yet, or at least I can't.
We can't hear you either, Melinda. Are you muted? It doesn't look like you are. Sharon, have you got the slides too?
I do. Yeah, Melinda, we can't hear you still. Let me just share this.
If you stop sharing, then Sharon can have a go.
Oh, sorry, now there. We got the last slide.
Punchline.
Right.
There we go. Oh, goodness. Okay. Melinda, are you there?
I'm not muted according to the icons on the list, so it must be a technical issue. Are you able to start, Sharon, or?
Yeah, just give me a second so I can get this script onto my other screen. Oh, I'm sorry, guys. This is a disaster.
Never mind.
It's all very informal, Sharon. It's fine.
Yeah, it's fine. Okay, right. Well, I guess I'll just read Melinda's bit as well. So unfortunately, she doesn't seem to be able to join us. So this presentation today is from myself, Sharon McMeekin, who's Head of Workforce Development with the Digital Preservation Coalition. And we're an international membership organisation working on digital preservation advocacy, community building, training, research and good practice. I had been hoping that joining me today to present was my colleague and partner in crime in this project, Melinda Haunton from the National Archives of the UK. And the TNA is both the Archive of the UK Central Government and a government agency which holds the leadership and development role for archives across England. So in our presentation today, we're picking up threads from two presentations we gave at IPRES 2019 when we were on the same panel on skills and capacity. And this is us there in the... are you there?
So,
Are you there, Melinda? Sorry, Melinda, we're only getting little bits of you.
I think she's left to restart. So
all right, just keep going then. Okay, so I was talking about DPC's next steps in digital preservation training, particularly kind of sustainability building around the digital preservation workforce. And Melinda was there to talk about the multi-strand approach the UK National Archives was taking to support archives across the UK to build their digital capacity. Today we're going to tell you a bit about those two goals, how they've come together and how we've developed a new project of immediate and enduring value for digital preservation. So last year, Melinda talked about all the ways the UK National Archives is trying to ensure that policy, networks and workforce opportunities align to bring digital issues to the fore to support successful digital development in UK archives. At that point, they hadn't yet launched the centrepiece of this activity, their digital capacity building strategy, Plugged In, Powered Up. And that was a targeted
Sharon,
piece of
can you hear me now?
Yeah, you're back now. Okay, I can let you take over now.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for coping while that's not working. Okay, I thought I should come in at Plugged In, Powered Up because this is our centrepiece. This is a targeted piece of work which puts resource into increasing the capacity of UK archives to preserve for access to digital content. The strategies aim to lever TNA's strengths. So, for example, small groups of archive school can share their team currently working in archives. We produce some advocacy material on the digital preservation that's specific to archive work because we know that some people, and particularly parent organisations, look to our website to promote our needs. And we support in the sector with a new mentoring programme. Individuals develop particular digital skills with support from those who have relevant experience. Plugged In, Powered Up has also been enhanced to create resources. So there are some digital versions which are a small part of here, which are practical tools.
Melinda, in fact, your talk is not really well. I can't really follow your talk because there are technical problems with the audio. So I know how we can resolve that.
Is it still bad? Sorry.
It's kind of chopped.
Oh, sorry, Sharon, can you again?
Yep, certainly.
Yeah, thank you, Sharon.
Sorry, are you
okay. Yeah, I can take over. Yeah. Okay, so the wider Plugged In, Powered Up project has really been an opportunity to create new resources, digital preservation workflows that you can see a small part of on the screen here. They're really practical tools for those actively working with digital records, but who need support in knowing how to put together open source tools to create meaningful workflows. This can help move practitioners from familiarity with individual tools to using them in a coherent package. We've also had good responses at the TNA from the first months of Plugged In Powered Up, despite all the disruptions the pandemic has caused. Some elements like the archive school and the peer monitoring work have run only once, and they're now looking to embed improvement and learning from that first year, which will then deliver those somewhat differently where COVID makes that necessary. Such programs can only reach quite small numbers as they are intensive and for small groups or on a one-to-one support. But a key element that they aimed for was developed in the first year was an online learning pathway to take those who are new or unconfident in digital preservation on a practical learning journey. And that's the programme that we're going to talk a little bit more about in the rest of the presentation today. It's called Novice to Know-How. The archive sector capacity research that led the TNA to create the Plugged In Powered Up strategy underlined that there was a gap in provision of really practical training, something that would guide learners to the steps needed to make meaningful use of digital preservation tools and to understand the fundamentals of practical digital preservation. Online training was needed to really meet the demands, to reach the large number of people and to provide ready reference as individuals use different tools. The research also showed a huge lack of confidence within the archive sector. Many people had attended digital preservation training in the past, but hadn't managed to make much use of it, and they felt daunted about even starting digital activity. They could see that there was a need for a structured learning pathway that led trainees through a number of logical stages, encouraging them to take immediate practical steps and underlining their learning progress as they studied. And so the TNA tendered out, and at the DPC we were lucky enough to become the development contractors for the Novice to Know-How project. So I stood in front of the IPRES audience last year and talked about how there was a clear and increasing demand for more digital preservation training resources. But at that point, I didn't have a clear idea about how we could actually meet that demand. I just knew that collaboration would be key. In the DPC, we've been further motivated by the growing size and diversity of our membership, and our training needs to be available to more people and in a wide variety of time zones. So online training seemed like the obvious answer, but we're a small organisation and we lack the capacity to take that forwards. The investment required, both in terms of time and money, to do it right is really high. So the call to tender for the development of the Novice to Know-How project provided us with exactly the opportunity we needed, with the bonus of a partnership with a valued DPC member. So when we started the development of Novice to Know-How Learning Pathway, we knew it would be important to build the course on a solid foundation. We wanted to make sure it looked into considerations of the needs of the community, as identified by the TNA survey and similar DPC work, as well as established standards. This resulted in us examining existing competency frameworks such as DISCURVE, as well as identifying the skills needed to deliver the requirements of modules such as DPC RAM and the NDSA levels. In mid-December 2019, myself and colleagues from TNA came together in London to knit these various strands. We sketched out a high-level but comprehensive skills framework aligned with the structure of DPC RAM and identified the elements that we wanted to be covered in the Novice to Know-How Learning Pathway. We then worked this into a coherent structure for progress through that learning pathway. With the draft of the learning pathway in place, we moved on to active development of the course content. For each module, this involves research, developing the module structure, drafting the content, design of and transfer it into a format for online delivery, review by at least one member of staff from both the DPC and TNA, and then edits based on that feedback and processing and upload into learning management systems. So it was quite an involved process. The Novice to Know-How project really gave me the opportunity to focus my time pretty much exclusively on this work. And so we were able to develop the content for the full learning pathway in just 3 months, from January to March 2020. And ultimately we produced 25 modules of content split across 6 courses, which then made up the wider learning pathway. A beta launch of it was run in April 2020, and the official launch held at the beginning of May. As with the pilot, we've been constantly amazed by the level of interest. Registrations sold out every month and ultimately led to TNA and DPC combining resources and additional capacity.
Sharon,
Yes.
please get to an end since we still have so many presentations before us.
Yeah, sure. I'll
you.
get just wrapping up now. To date, we've given places to more than 1,300 learners from 33 countries across Europe, Asia, Australasia, Africa, South America, North America. We've got a completion rate of about 76%, which is far above the average completion rates for courses offered via MOOCs, which is estimated anywhere between 4 and 12%. And while the interest has no doubt increased by the changes in working patterns due to the COVID-19 pandemic, feedback really mentions the positive aspect of the kind of flexibility and accessibility of the course and the newfound confidence that people are getting. So just very quickly, what's next? We're proactive about updates. We've already revised modules based on new versions of Droid, and we're actually also in the middle of a new phase of development to add 5 additional tool demo modules to the course. We've also recently completed a survey of member training needs at the DPC, and we're going to be adding to that by going out and surveying the broader digital preservation community. And finally, Novice to Know-How was originally scoped to include content at intermediate and advanced levels. So we're going to continue to investigate opportunities to expand it further. So Novice to Know-How will hopefully provide the digital preservation community with learning opportunities for time to come. Sorry, very quick rush to the end there.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Sharon. Really informative, and in my German tiny corner, I wasn't really informed about your program, and it's impressing. Questions? If we could have one, Paul Stokes issued Droid, done. So what's next?
Well, we're at the moment, the Novice to Know-How 1.1 is adding tool demos on more kind of free tools that are open source tools that are available. So we've already added one on a checksumming tool called Checksum by Corv. I've just in the middle of drafting a module on using Terracopy. I have also recently finished one on using the command line and various kind of facilities that are available on that. We've also got modules upcoming on using Droid with CSV Validator for fixity checking, as well as the tool fixity. And then as to the additional content, we'll see as time develops as to what more we can add, depending on the resources that are available.
Thank you, really impressive stuff you're doing, and that you're doing training units for particular tools. We don't have that in Germany. All right, thank you. So the next one on the list will be Daniel Steinmeier. Are you a compatriot of mine? Are you German?
Not really.
Oh, I see.
In the far past only, yeah.
Okay, Daniel, go for it.
Okay, yes. I will share my screen. So, I'm Daniel Steinmeier. I use the Dutch pronunciation of my family name. I'm a digital preservation officer at the National Library of the Netherlands, and I'm also involved with the Dutch Digital Heritage Network. We've been working on a strategic agenda for the coming years, and we also included the topic of diversity. So yes, we'll be talking a bit about inclusion, diversity, and how we think it relates to digital preservation. So first of all, we could say, why would we even care about diversity in relation to digital preservation? Because digital preservation is already for everyone, you would say, but actually power structures are embedded and replicated in technology that does seem neutral. So we actually want technology to enable us to make these power structures explicit and allow for multiple views. And I think digital preservation concepts could also be used for enabling diversity, and we should see what the impact is of digital preservation concepts and enabling these techniques and technical solutions for multiple views from different communities. While working on this, I think we should expect backlash and face-saving reactions, because actually we're criticizing something and people maybe want to keep things as they are. And already when we mentioned that this talk would be on iPress, immediately there was this Twitter response that which books are you going to burn? So, but we're not planning on burning books, and we're not planning either on erasing history. So what are we actually going to do? There are these different processes like decolonizing and bias detection that are really relevant for the topic of diversity. We also have these digital preservation concepts, which might be candidates for supporting these processes. So what actually needs to happen to make these two things come together? I think we need to involve communities, and with these communities define concepts to enable them to use these to create output that is relevant for these same communities. So they can be involved in actually mainstreaming the concept, so determining what impact diverse perspectives have on how we use these concepts and the technical solutions that are bound to these concepts. And then they can be used by these same communities to create output. So just because there's limited time, I have two examples of that. A process could be that, we involve community to create extra metadata. So we have enriched metadata, for instance, on gender. So we create richer gender information that is added to the catalog, for instance. And this can then be used to have a process that does bias detection. And that has as output a gap analysis that could inform appraisal processes to, in the end, create a more diverse collection. I think in digital preservation, there are already requirements that really tie in with these processes. So for instance, the repository shall ensure that the content information is understandable for the designated community. So, and if not, you should add context. So this is relevant, I think. And also, the repository shall have an independent mechanism for verifying completeness of the collection. And if not, we should add content. So I think these two requirements are really relevant in the case of diversity. Well, this is about the collection, but we could also talk about metadata. And there are actually these different methods for extracting alternative information from existing collections, like rereading, disembedding, recombining. And this may result in, for instance, added context, which could be relevant as representation information. Or we could add provenance, so there's actually multiple provenance from diverse perspectives. Or we could add more relations between objects. So all these could be possible examples of output that is generated by these processes. So in conclusion, I think we need to see what digital preservation concepts could be useful in this regard, and maybe some of them may need to be refined a bit or changed a bit. And then we can have inclusive digital archiving processes. And we should also come up with smart technical solutions. And in both these processes, I think we need to involve the community. And we also need to do this as a matter of policy, so not as a one-time initiative. That was it.
Thank you, Daniel. Did any questions arrive at the chat? Not yet. Still none, so I will step in. Now they come. How do you plan to prioritize? Have you published this at all?
Not yet. So we are planning on writing an article, and I also interviewed a lot of people for writing this report. And I also worked with a young researcher who actually did a thesis on the way how underrepresented groups are actually reflected in archive material. So we are planning on writing an article together, and hopefully in English. So everyone can benefit.
Good idea. Contextualizing archives is an important part of it. On priorities, naturally, Harrow, do you need to understand the gaps first to add them to metadata? Yeah.
Yeah, that's important. I think, yeah, we need to involve communities and determine together what gaps there are. Yeah, I think that's important. Okay, sure.
You call you, all right. Fine. Any more questions? No. So I have the honor to receive our last speaker in this session and stream. Paul, you just asked something and now you're speaking. Please introduce yourself and then go for your slides, please.
Okay, trust you can see me in the bottom left-hand corner there. I was told to have some fun with this, so I'm having some fun with this. So, developing with the sector, and before I start, in case you're worrying about the logos or wondering, I'm Paul Stokes. I'm also a director of OPF and temporary chairperson for the next 3 months. I'm a director of DPC and chair of the Advocacy and Community Engagement Committee, ACE Committee. Thank you, Sarah, for the acronym. I work for JISC as a product owner on preservation and what used to be called the Research Data Shared Service, and then the Open Research Hub, and now, well, that bit's coming up later on. Okay, so starting with the sector, how do we start all this? Telling the story usually takes a little bit longer than I've got, but we'll romp through quickly. We were doing this sort of thing for a long time. We had the Managing Research Data Program in 2009 to 2011 about infrastructure data management planning, managing research data 2011 to 13, developing training materials, etc., etc. And then we had the Research at Risk Co-Design Program 2014 to 16, and the Research Data Spring Program. And in 2015, a report came out from JISC in collaboration with Sconnell, RLUK, New CISO, looking at RDM in universities. And they identified 5 key areas for action in research data management, one of which was interaction with infrastructure and interoperability actions. And it was shown to be a clear demand for national shared infrastructure and services around research data management. And there were potential economies of scale and demand for a national approach to data preservation. So all this led to the Research Data Shared Service project. So other things driving it as well were mandates. Funders were requiring the researchers to keep their data, the data underpinning research, available and findable online, accessible to others, 10 years from last access. The recent changes in the law about personal information, storing information, GDPR, taking more interest in how researchers manage their data sets. Increasing concerns about research integrity and reproducibility, that's the other one, and calls for greater access to the original research data, and the increasing recognition of the academic and societal benefits of open research. All this sort of boils down to an overarching concept that universities have to be careful with their data. So how did we start? Well, we talked to a lot of people. Over 70 institutions took part in initial requirements gathering exercises. And we also talked to many vendors and consultants and system providers, a few of which are shown there. We also had 16 pilots, actually a bit more depending on how you count, because some of those were consortia. We provided a choice of proprietary and open source products. We connected to many standard systems. And one thing that's interesting to know actually at this point is that at the very beginning of this process, there was a degree of unawareness of what a repository, and in particular a preservation system, actually entailed outside a relatively small core of specialists. So we had our requirements, we refined, and we started with this broad model. Some of you may be familiar with this, and after lots more talking and more development, we ended up with this model. Essentially a repository that connects to central infrastructure, the messaging service, all based on Amazon in the cloud, that cloud that's come up so many times today, outputting to preservation, automatically to preservation systems, also APIs onto scholarly comms, data site crossref, etc. And we also came up with this. And before you look at that with squint and say, well, how the hell do you expect us to read that? I don't expect you to read that. That is the data model. We've provided a link. If you want to go and see it, The links there and back of yourself later on. This canonical data model, it's standards-based, it's extensible, and it's the heart of the infrastructure that allows what used to be called the Open Research Hub, and is now called other things, all to talk to each other and talk to external systems. Agile was a core development philosophy for us. For those of you who aren't familiar, and these days everyone is familiar with Agile, but I'll go through anyway. It's about short development cycles. It's about incremental change with a potentially shippable product at the end of each cycle. And this, in case you're wondering about this slide here, this is a conceptualization of the Agile process. From skateboard to car. If you start with a skateboard, add a little bit to it, it becomes a scooter, then add a few more bits to it, it becomes a bicycle, a few more bits, it becomes a motorcycle, and eventually it turns into a car. All of those are potentially shippable products and can be shipped, and ongoing continuous development. Other things that Agile is particularly useful for is requirements can change. And they did change in this concept because various other new mandates came out, for instance, FAIR, Plan S, and so on. And so we changed. This type of philosophy allows you to change very quickly and easily. And we're still changing. We have continuous development, continuous update. We don't have every 6 months or every year a release. There are releases as and when required all the time. And we changed the name. We started off being the Research Data Share Service. RDSS is an acronym which many on this call will be familiar with. It then became the JISC Open Research Hub when we transitioned from pilot into a service, and it's a full-blown service now. However, we found as we were marketing the service, as we were talking to people about the service, that individual components of the service, we had an appetite for individual components of the service. For instance, preservation, there was an appetite for preservation way across the board at an institution, much, much more than you would normally see in research circles. There was an appetite for the integration systems, systems to connect areas and items within the infrastructure at a university or a research institute. So what was Research Open Hub, or JISC Open Research Hub, JORA or Aura, depending on how you pronounced it, became the JISC Repository, Preservation, Repository Plus, which is Repository Plus Preservation, and Research Systems Connect, which is the bit that connects everything together. As you can see, we've taken the RONSEAL approach, and sorry, that's a very UK-centric comment, but the RONSEAL approach, they do what they say on the tin. And we're still consulting with the sector. We haven't stopped there. We've been back to the sector and we've produced various reports. There's a district report, current research practice in research data management and sharing is being published, and I've got a link if you need it on ResearchGate for that particular report. We've also taken the original interviews for that report further with the JORA 4OA, Open Access. Additional interviews, reports, more material will be published as and when. We're exploring more on the appetites for new changes, adding bits and practical issues and financial and commercial considerations. So continue talking and ongoing talking. For conclusions, well, as I mentioned more briefly, research and the need for a repository tends to be concentrated in particular departments or schools. However, preservation is the gateway drug that gets you into a university, that gets you into an institution, because everywhere across an institution has a use for, that uses electronic data has a use for preservation. We found one departmental inquiry often leads to expressive interest across the institution, from the registry, ERM, financial, everything. There's no one size fits all. That's I suppose fairly obvious, but producing a service, you have to have variations on a theme, and we are currently working on variations on a theme to allow for the small institutions and consortia and so on. One thing that is always useful to note is what people want isn't always what they need. If you go and talk to people, it's all about finding the problems and producing solutions to fit those problems, not asking them, not selling them something you've got. and also the agile is good. I mentioned that it allows us to react to change and to add things incrementally. And finally, although it's not final on the items there, repeat after me. Backup is not preservation. A repository is not preservation. So many people, when we talk to them about these things, say, "Well, I've got a backup system. I've got a repository. I don't need preservation." They're wrong. And we found a core part of our message is to talk to them and to help them understand that particular concept. So that's me. That was a very, very quick romp through. So go for it.
Thank you, Paul. All right. There's a comment I don't really understand. Diagram, sorry. That was not a question. That was just a comment.
Yes, I can understand that. It's there to look at, but essentially it's a way of describing the data, metadata, and the people connected to the metadata and so on. But it also allows, I assume we're talking about the data model here. It's a way of mapping information from one system into another in an agreed acceptable format. Oh Lord, there's a really long question there. I'm going to try and read that.
It is rather a discussion about how National Archives influence preservation practice in authorities, I guess, and it's developed over time. Is there a real question for Paul, please?
Well, there's a question about COVID. I noticed that for all of us, and not just me. How has it affected the work you presented? It hasn't really, because JISC is a very geographically spread out organization anyway. Many of us work from home quite a lot. The information I'm presenting, it's not particularly changed by COVID, apart from the fact that it's allowed me to play around with fancy things on Zoom a bit more.
All right. So we are in the question and answer phase. So please reflect on what you heard in this session. Please ask questions that might wrap the session up, that are overarching questions. We've got 5 more minutes.
I think I would just come in and answer the COVID question as well, actually, that we know that Novice to Know-How would have been incredibly popular anyway, but I think it's definitely been more so because of the COVID crisis and the fact that most people are working from home. But we do know that from previous surveys and things that the biggest barriers people have to accessing training are finding the money to actually be able to afford the course, the travel and subsistence to go to a face-to-face one. And then increasingly just being allowed the time away from their desk and their day-to-day work to be able to take part in any development opportunity. So that really came out in surveys before and the feedback after the development of Novice to Know-How, that people have really appreciated the flexibility and accessibility of the course. So I think COVID has an effect, but I think it probably would have been popular anyway, I think is the message there.
Barbara's got an interesting comment as well about the affected big picture and a game. Barbara, could you switch yourself on and explain your game?
Yes, I can. We developed a game with a use case, and we took as a use case an imaginary museum with a digitized collection that they needed to store somewhere. And we gave them, in the game, we gave some input. The project lead is appointed to the technical lead, and he thinks, well, his neighbor has some knowledge of storage. Should he make a deal with his neighbor, or should he look for an official partner? So we did the impact analysis with a group of people during the last year's World Digital Preservation Day. And it was a very interesting exercise to get the concept clear, and to let people play with all the opportunities and with the big picture concept. So during COVID, we were not able to do that live. So I think we should find some alternatives if COVID is affecting us much more longer. But the interaction between the participants, and they were all of different organizations, that was the interesting thing, because people said, well, in my organization, we have an official rule for this. We have experienced that someone stored all our collections with a well-known other museum in the next town or something like that, without making any agreements, for example. So this was very interesting to interchange, but yes, we need to find a new way to spread the word about the about the concept, and this was the first opportunity.
Brilliant, thank you. All right, any more questions? Yeah, like Andrea says, I have to thank you all the 5 of you who presented. I'm really delighted. This has been my first iPress session ever. Although this is not really iPress, I know, right? Raivo sums it up by saying lots of opportunities to collaborate and join shared services from this session. Yes. Yeah. It's difficult to choose which collaboration to join, right? Yeah. Barbara says we could kind of enhance the break. Yeah, I think this is the point where we can leave, and we will meet again on the conference, I hope. See you soon. It was a pleasure to meet you all. Bye-bye.
I'm going to post the links to the next streams as well. Thanks, Kai, for streams 1 and stream 3. Just a reminder that this is stream 2. So if you want to know where you're going next, just hang fire, and I'll pop those in the list for you. There you go. And please take the opportunity to go and stretch your legs and have a break and take some fresh air.
Yeah, right. Bye-bye.
Hi, should I try to share my screen just for testing?
Yes, is that Jonathan speaking? Sorry, I can't see anybody. I've got my my break screen up, so I'll just pop that down, and then I'll let you do that.
No, that was Tobias, I think.
Oh,
Yeah,
This
that
is
was
Jonathan.
me.
This is Jonathan. I have the English accent.
So, Jonathan, you'll be pleased to know that we've got all the speakers present and correct. If the speakers would like to turn on their screens and just give Jonathan a wave, then he knows who's who.
Hi, Lucy.
Hello. Hi.
Hi, Tobias is there. Ivo. There's
Yeah.
Lotte. Hi, Lotte.
Hi.
Hi.
And I'm going to leave because I'll be at the other stream for the next time. Alles Gute, Tobias, für deine Präsentation.
So should we try to share the screen after in the sequence just to see if it works?
Yeah, I'll go first. Okay, so that, and then I want to. So hopefully you should just see my slide and not my notes.
That's
Yes,
right.
great. Yay, that worked. I'm surprised.
Is there any way you'd like me to introduce you, Lucy, apart from name, rank, and serial number?
That's perfect, and I'll probably repeat as well, so that's fine. Thank you.
Fine, no worries. Then next up, I think, was Tobias.
Yeah, I tried.
We'll try sharing your screen.
It doesn't work, so it's good that we try it. I have to change the system. Yeah. So.
Ah, there's Vincent. Hi, Vincent.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Ah, that's everyone. Great. We're just trying out screen sharing, Vincent. Tobias is.
I'm just after Tobias. Hello, Tobias, by the way.
Oh, he just disappeared. Okay, why don't you try sharing your screen, Vincent, and we'll.
Okay, well, so let me see.
I would try it again. Okay.
Yep.
Can you see my presentation?
Oh, that's Vincent.
Yeah. Oh.
Yep, that's good, Vincent.
Does it work?
Yep.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. The second one here. You can see it?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Good.
Can I try it?
Yes, I will. How do I remove the share?
Hover at
Stop.
the top.
Stop sharing at the top. Or at the bottom under share screen.
I can't really see where it. How do you stop sharing the screen? Oh yeah. Okay. Oh, thank you.
Help! You've got tech support on hand. That's amazing.
So let's try it. Do you see my screen now?
Yep. Perfect.
Yep. All good.
Okay, great. Then have to stop it.
Okay. Ivo, do you want to try?
Yes.
Tobias, is there any way you'd like me to introduce you? Just say your name and where you're from. Anything else?
No, I don't think so, because I will wrap up my last speak of the IPRES shortly, so that will be enough for an introduction, I guess.
Okay. That looks good. Ivo, yep, that's looking good.
Okay. Stop.
And last one is Lotte. And Vincent, anything you'd like me to say to introduce you? Anything particular, or just?
Not really.
Okay.
That's fine, I think. I'm together with Raja Apuswamy. Wait. Can you see him?
Sorry, I think someone's still sharing the screen, maybe?
Yeah.
Lotta is just testing hers, and that looks
Yes, it works.
Yeah.
Brilliant. It does.
So Raja from
Perfect.
Eurocom, we are
Yes.
at Eurocom right here.
Hello, hey, very nice to meet you all. This is my first, meeting at IPREST, and I'm very excited to be here. So I'll share the presentation with Vincent. I'll do the second part of the presentation.
It's mostly him, actually. We're here in Sophia Antipolis in the south of France.
Ooh, lovely.
That's about it. Yes. Well, it's stormy actually today, but usually it's lovely.
Can you say your name again? Is it Raja?
Yes, my name is Raja Appuswamy.
Yeah, Raja. Well, I'll just do Raja if you don't mind.
Raja's perfect. Yeah.
Yeah, we're informal.
Yeah.
Okay, that's great. And Ivo, is there something you'd like me to say, or just go straight into you?
Yeah, we could just dive directly into the presentation. I think it's okay.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
And Lotta, anything to say?
No, maybe that I'm presenting tomorrow as well for the DPC Awards. So if you don't catch it this time, there's always tomorrow. And then it's 3 minutes, so.
Oh, you got to do it in 3 minutes. Yeah, today is, so these are all 10-minute ones, or we have a 10-minute slot per person. So 1 minute, I won't take 1 minute. I'll take very little time to introduce you. But I'll keep track of time. About 8 minutes, I'll give you a signal, probably something like this on the screen, or I'll just jump in and talk. That you've got about a minute left, and if you can wrap up, and then we'll capture questions. There's who's the got to look for
Patricia.
Patricia,
that's me. I'm Patricia. Sorry, I came in a little bit late and didn't introduce myself.
Hi, sorry, Patricia. So do you want to? So Patricia's the co-chair, and you're going to take care of Q&A and watch the chat?
Yeah, that's what I'm expecting to do. So if you need me to do anything else, just let me know. But otherwise, I'll just look at the chat, keep track of the questions, and ask the questions at the end of each interview, of each presentation.
Perfect. Is that, so particularly Lucy, is there a question that you'd like to be asked? Just in case, because right at the beginning, questions might not come in. Is there a question that I can ask you that would be really helpful for you?
Not that I can think of. I think my nerves are just like too much for me right now.
Oh no.
I think, yeah. Not that I can think of at the moment. I'm sorry. Okay. That would be really helpful for both of us. Sorry.
No, it's fine. I'll think of one too. I just thought if there's something you think, oh, I'd love people to ask me that, then I can.
Oh, mine.
That's the chair's prerogative. I can always jump in with the first question.
Nothing that I can think of, but thank you.
It's fine. It's fine. No, it'll be good. Don't be nervous. It's a friendly crowd. We won't bite.
I know. The only thing would be, I think, I'm not sure if I can see you when I'm kind of in the midst of it. So if I am taking too long, please do just like jump in with sound. Yeah, I think that's probably easiest.
Yeah.
I think I got it to, I'm just probably over the cusp of 8 minutes. So if it is a quick introduction, that gives me a little bit more time, which is grand.
Okay, no, that's fine. I'll jump in. I'm going to ask everyone to mute, but I'll unmute. So hopefully it'll be quiet on the line, and so you'll hear me when I jump in.
Okay, thank you.
I can take care of the mutings, Jonathan. I can make sure everyone's quiet apart from the speaker.
Oh, you have the master button.
That's cool.
Good. Anything else we need to know, Sarah? Something I've missed?
No, you've been very organised. I'm very impressed. Well done.
Thank you. Yeah, sorry I didn't come to the briefing on Friday. I had lots of stuff to do.
That's fine. That's fine. We're very happy to have you and all of our volunteer chairs and co-chairs. It's much appreciated.
Oh, it's fun to do. I hope we get a good crowd. First person coming in. So when are we scheduled to start? At 35. So that's another 4 minutes or so. So people should start coming in now. I think I'll start pretty much on time, just because we don't know how many people are turning up, so we might as well just start on time, or when people just dribble in, then that's up to them.
Absolutely.
Oh, we're getting more people in
I'll
now.
mute everybody now. Just and then you can unmute as you wish to speak.
Yep. Okay, good morning, everyone. Those who are on video, can you hear me okay? Just give me a thumbs up or nod. Excellent, fantastic. Well, welcome everyone. My name is Jonathan Clark, and I'm chairing this session. My day job is as managing agent of the DOI Foundation. So although this session has nothing to do with identifiers, but lots to do with persistence. We're on day one, session 2 of stream 2. So if you are meaning to go to stream 1 or any of the other streams, stream 3 or 4, there's a link in the chat to get there, but this is stream 2. And we're about to start the second session, which will run until 12:40 in European time. We've got 5 speakers for you. The theme of this stream is picking up the threads from 2019. And so it's a mixture of either things that happened in 2019, and some of the speakers will actually pick up on themes that they talked about or presented posters in Amsterdam. If you remember, those of you in Amsterdam, that fabulous building, the Eye Museum. Sad we're not somewhere just as spectacular, but Zoom, I guess it's fine. It's informal. Please, if you have questions, comments, feel free to put them into the chat. And there's a co-chair, Patricia. Do you want to wave, Patricia? Yeah, Patricia's helping out. She's going to look at the chat because it's a bit hard to facilitate and look at the chat at the same time. So we're together. If there's anything you'd like to say to me, then just private chat to me directly. We'll move straight on. Each presentation is about 8 minutes, and we'll have a fairly fast flow. We're going to start in Britain at the British Film Institute with Lucy Wales. There she goes. So I'm just going to hand over to you and take it away, Lucy.
Thank you very much. Okay, let me just share the screen. Okay, and away we go. Hopefully you can see my presentation. So hello everyone, and thank you for including me in today's stream. My name is Lucy Wales and I'm the Digital Preservation and Data Manager at the British Film Institute. Today I'm going to talk through the automated workflows and processes that we created for the BFI Heritage 2022 video digitization project and how we have maintained those through the COVID-19 pandemic. Very briefly, the BFI 2022 project incorporates multiple strands, of which the video digitization project is one of them. The objective of the project is to preserve, through digitization, 100,000 works from the BFI National Archive and the UK significant heritage collections, identified as high value and stored on at-risk videotape formats that will otherwise be lost forever. For this presentation, I will be talking through remote working, file transfer, validation, transcoding, segmentation and documentation, ingest and preservation, and access. So first, remote working. As with many organisations, from March 2020, staff at the British Film Institute were predominantly working from home, and from May 2020, we were working with a reduced number of staff. However, we were still receiving files from our network of framework suppliers, and we needed to ensure these files were progressed through to preservation. Remote access while working from home was essential for this. To allow remote working, we needed to ensure we had tight security on access to our network, and therefore we have a dedicated firewall to protect the preservation network, 100 of intrusion prevention policies in place using a cyber threat database, and we only allow permitted IPs, no traffic allowed from anonymous networks. And the methods we've allowed for remote working are remote desktop client from the BFI network, which has been most useful for Windows. And for Mac and Linux, we have workstation remote working technology using the cloud. All of this has provided access to our systems and softwares and processes in use for the digitization project. So file transfer. So for file transfer for this project, we use Aspera. Each of the digitization framework suppliers has their own separate access to our project space and are able to upload files to our network. Only once the files have completed transfer will they proceed to the next step, validation. Aspera allows us many ways to watch over the transfer of the files, including, but not limited to, using the dashboard and the ability to run scheduled or ad hoc reports. Any issues with the file transfer can be flagged with a relevant stakeholder. Validation. The framework suppliers are digitizing the videotapes to the specification for V210 MOV files. Once the files have completed the transfer to our network, they then go through the file validation checks. The files are validated against MediaConch policies we've built to our digitization specification. If the files pass validation, they then move to the next stage, and if they fail, they are moved into a failure folder, and this folder is regularly checked and any errors are corrected. As we are now some way into the project, we rarely see failures appear from this workflow. However, each time a new videotape source is introduced, we review the digitization specification for that tape source and create a new policy as required, as we are currently doing with digitization from source videotapes, HDCAM and HDCAM SR. We then request test files from the framework suppliers and test their deliveries against this new policy. Transcoding. Following successful validation of the files transferred, they are then transcoded to FFV1 Matroska using FFmpeg. Our reasons for choosing FFV1 Matroska are that it's an open format, it's lossless and uses FrameMD5 to prove the losslessness, and it's compressed so less data storage required, which in the long term is cost effective. Our FFV1 Matroska files have been independently reviewed by peers from the open source community. Again, it has been scripted that if the files transcode successfully, they move to the next stage. If they fail, they move into a failures folder, and these require further investigation. If the files transcode to FFV1 Matroska successfully, then two processes happen: segmentation and documentation. We have single videotapes within our collection that contain multiple programs. For preservation, we want each program to have its own preservation file. The digitization framework suppliers are digitizing whole tapes, and so at this stage, the file needs to be split into its individual programs. In order for successful segmentation to happen, a few things must be in place. It relies on timings metadata in our collections database called CID, Collections Information Database, and cannot be segmented without it. It validates the timings metadata and has to be well formed and logically sound, i.e. there's no start and end overlapping. If these are not present, the files will not split and they are added to a splitting issues log, which needs to be investigated. However, if they are in place, it then uses FFmpeg stream copy to create segmentation outputs. It adds intelligent start and end overlaps to avoid data loss through error, and it uses frame MD5 to confirm lossless video copy. Once the segmentation has completed, it starts the documentation process, which is an automated creation of new records in our collections information database for the Matroska records with a source-derived relationship to the videotape item. Python scripts which use REST API of the collections database to create records over the internet, and the timings meta from the videotape gets recalculated and stored in the Matroska record, and it identifies non-video sections and the start and end timings. Following all of that, it then moves on to ingest and preservation. So once successfully segmented and documented, the file is moved into the ingest workflow. So we have Python scripts which automate file validation, including file name, extension, basic compliance, creation of a record and immediate ingest job in our media asset management system, and has transcode as required. Checking of preservation outcome on data tape in our data tape libraries with MD5 checksum comparison, and deletion of the file where BitPerfect preservation to tape is confirmed.
One more minute, Lucy.
Thank you. The Media Asset Manager is integrated with our collections database to automate the linking of the databases together with unique identifiers, sharing of UMIDs for files between our Media Asset Management and Collections Management system, and deletion of our collections management records where preservation object is deleted. While all these processes were happening, we needed to ensure the files in our Media Asset Management system for the regional and national partners. So we created a VPN in the firewall to enable partner archives to view in our Media Asset Management system from their homes. They're viewing H.264 MP4 in HLS containers created by our Media Asset Management system on ingest of the Matroskas. And the HLS viewable is also viewable in our Media Asset Management system by staff with robust web playback and no buffering. Although we have tried to remote work as much as possible, we have had to do on-site visits as required, about 1 per week, which has been to restart servers and other equipment after non-responsive state, address issues with cloud-based remote working stations, and undertake routine or emergency maintenance, e.g. data tape libraries, firm updates requiring physical reboots. And that's me done. Thank you very much for your time and for listening. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lucy. That's great. I think we have a quick question from Patricia, but we have to be really quick. I'm conscious of the time. Patricia?
It is my question, actually, but I'm just wondering, that workflow sounds amazing and it's fully automated. But my question is, are there still manual elements to it?
The manual elements mainly come in terms of the timings. You know, if the timings metadata is not compliant, then we have to update the data within our collections, within our database, or you know, if there's been failures from the segmentation, then we maybe need to rename files, the odd file here and there. But that's basically most of the manual intervention that we have.
Okay, and you can still do that remotely as well.
Yeah, we can do that remotely. So yeah, it's basically been carrying on this whole time, which is great.
It is amazing.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Lucy. That was great.
Thank you very much. Thanks.
So we're going to move on to Tobias, if you want to share your screen.
Yeah.
So Tobias is Tobias Stanker from the German National Library, and he presented at the IPRES in Amsterdam, and he's going to give us an update on that. So over to you, Tobias. 8 minutes. I'll give you a reminder at 7.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, this is an update on the presentation I gave last year. And this was about emulation environment for giving access multimedia objects in libraries. Just of course, a short wrap up of what I presented last year. The emulation service at the German National Library was or is about basically disk images and giving access in reading rooms for multimedia publications like encyclopedias, databases, basically software on disk images like CD-ROMs, DVD-ROMs, even floppy disks. And therefore we use an emulation framework, the well-known emulation as a service framework by the University of Freiburg, and also OpenSLX now, the outsourced company of the University of Freiburg. And there was a research project, a German research project several years ago, EMIL, and afterwards there was an internal project of the German National Library, EMIL integration, where we took the developed framework of this project and included it in our infrastructure at the German National Library and made some adjustments together with OpenSLX to fit our needs. And the system is made in a way that there are many emulations are supported for old computer systems, C64, Atari ST, several Windows versions, Amiga, and others. So one of the interesting points of especially our EMIL integration project was getting the licensees to use these old emulation systems in emulation. And last year I talked a bit about the different solutions we found. And we found solutions for most of the systems. For Windows, we had a framework license that still works for old systems. For MS-DOS and Atari ST, there are free alternatives. For C64 and Amiga, it is possible to acquire a license, although it was quite difficult to find the license holder to get the license. But a big problem I reported last year was Apple systems, old Apple systems, because we contacted Apple Germany, because these are normally the peoples we should contact about this, and we never got an answer. On several tries and several ways we tried to contact them, and there was no answer at all. So that was the state last year. But there's something, actually an update on this one, because I also tried to contact Apple USA just by sending an email to Tim Cook, Tim Cook's email address. As you know, it's a public address. And several months later, I had in my post a contract from Apple USA. And they gave us quite surprising free license to use Apple II and old System 7 systems for the use case. So giving access in our reading rooms with emulators. So suddenly we had a license to use these Apple systems. I'm not sure how this works for others. As far as I know, we are the only ones worldwide who actually have a license like this. But I just think it's interesting that obviously Apple is willing to support emulation or preservation actions of heritage institutions in this way. So now we are able to use the automatic emulation. So our framework is able to analyze the objects when called from the reading room and will then automatically start the fitting emulation. So now we have a huge range of possible supported environments. And in our reading rooms, we have Windows systems, but it's now possible to start older systems in the browser window and get access to the objects. So like C64 or old Macs and so on. So the main update was actually about the license question. The other parts of the usage, there were not so much advantages. The system, as I reported last year, is only available currently for a handful of objects of different systems. We still don't have an automatic workflow for ingest of all disk images in our preservation system. That would be the requirement to get access to everything. We have actually thousands disks with material, and we need a project, and that's just in the early beginnings to plan this, to have a systematic approach of making images of all these files and put them in our preservation system. So the actual workflow of accessing works and the emulation works and the access system in the reading room work for many emulations, but the material is still not in our preservation system to do this on a large scale. So that's more a problem of creating the images. So that was just a short update, and yeah, I think we can start with the questions.
Fantastic, thank you very much, Tobias. Well, I think that's great, everyone. Well, Tim Cook.
Yeah.
So Patricia, do we have some questions?
Not in the chat, unless someone has a last minute one. I don't think so. I do have one, and I'm just curious about, unless you have any, Jonathan, but otherwise I was curious to know, you mentioned that the system is not used much. I'm just wondering how much are you talking to researchers about the possibility of this type of access, and if you're doing any work in that direction?
No, so our actually goal is to give access to everything we collect as part of our legal deposit. And our legal deposit is actually quite broad, everything published in Germany. And we have a few exceptions because we don't collect board games, therefore we don't collect computer games. And so, but in principle, every book-like publication in digital form is collected, and therefore we have lots of data carriers with all kinds of material going back to the late 70s. And for all these data carriers, we want to give access in our reading rooms, and that was the motivation of this. So as soon as we are able to put all the images of all these data carriers in our preservation system, we can then give access with this emulation framework in our reading rooms.
Thank you.
Okay, lovely. Thank you very much, Tobias. So next up, we have Vincent and Raja. And they're, if you want to share your screen, and they're calling in from the south of France, which of course normally would be a cue to say, wow, wonderful weather, but it's the first day of autumn today, and it turns out there's a storm in the south of France, so that's highly appropriate. Vincent, over to you. I'll do the timing again. I'll give you a reminder after 7 minutes if it's necessary. So please go ahead.
Jonathan. Thank you. Hello, everyone. So I will start very briefly and then move to Raja. So it's a quick follow-up from my presentation of last year at IPRES about passive digital preservation. So for anyone who's not familiar with the paper, there's the link here, so please check it if you haven't already. Basically, the progress over the past year related to this paper is that actually it was mostly related to microfilm, and now it works with paper as well, so digital preservation on paper. There's also compression embedded within the system, so there was a bootstrap that was 17 pages and now it's only 13, and also of course the archive data itself can be compressed. For instance, if it's ASCII text, it can be compressed quite a lot. I've had compression ratios that go as far as 1,000 for one, so it's really efficient and it's completely transparent for the user, so it doesn't make any difference for the user that the data is actually compressed. A few minor improvements like speed, etc. And also the solution since last year was successfully tested independently by the CNES, which is the French Space Agency, and EURECOM, where I sit, which is a research center in Sophia Antipolis in France. And now I give the floor to Raja.
Hello, everybody. It's nice to be here. First off, I have a question. Are you able to see the change of slides, or is it stuck on the first slide? I'm sorry, Jonathan, are you able to see the slide changing?
It's no DNA as
yes, perfect. Okay, so
yeah, it was slow, but it's just changed.
Yes, perfect. So I would like to just give a quick overview of the work here at EURECOM and what I've been doing in collaboration with Vincent here. So here at EURECOM, we are working on a project OligoArchive. I'll talk about that briefly. We are focusing on using synthetic DNA as a data storage medium. For those of you who have not heard of this, it might sound extremely sci-fi-ish. I just want to say this is the DNA. It's exactly the same DNA that we all have in our bodies, except now we have the ability to manufacture this DNA outside our body. So we refer to this as synthetic DNA. The reason why we want to look at DNA as a storage medium are three main reasons, essentially. The first has to do with density. So the graph here is taken from the Semiconductor and Synthetic Biology Consortium's roadmap. And what you see here is the areal density, the volumetric density of all current storage media and DNA. And as you can see, potentially DNA offers a 7 orders of magnitude improvement in density over current storage media. And you might have seen this. This is the reason why some news articles talk about being able to store the entire world's data in the back of a semi-trailer. So there is some truth to that. The second reason why we want to look at DNA has to do with durability. For those of you who are not aware of this research, Professor George Church at Harvard and his team have been focusing on extracting DNA from fossils of extinct animals. Woolly mammoth is an example which used to survive in Siberian permafrost about 5,000 years ago. And they actually tried to revive the woolly mammoth back again by injecting the DNA and by using CRISPR to modify the DNA of elephants today. So we know that DNA is incredibly durable even in short-lived environments. And so if you preserve it properly, DNA has the potential to last for millennia. And the third reason has to do with the fact that DNA does not suffer from media obsolescence like current technologies. This has to do with the fact that the biological density of DNA is fixed. Kreider's rate that applies to hard disks where the areal density improves every 16% every year, or tape density improving 30% for every year, does not apply to DNA. So we do not have to migrate data that's stored in DNA every 10 years or 20 years to deal with media upgrades, to deal with technology upgrades, and so on. So these are the three main reasons why we want to look at DNA. And we, together as a consortium of people, have established Project OligoArchive. This is a European Union-wide Future and Emerging Technologies initiative, which has been funded last year. We have started working on making DNA usable as a computational and a storage medium. And we are looking at building the entire storage stack using DNA. The intended use case is to actually use DNA as a backend of tape, so behind tape as a deep archival storage tier. And it's not only limited for preserving images or videos, but we are actually trying to bring DNA to the enterprise market, where people who have enterprise databases can attach, plug in, and play DNA. And potentially, we are looking at cloud vendors like Microsoft and Google who can deploy a DNA-based cold storage system on their premise. So we are looking at pretty much the entire stack, starting from the media layer, where we are looking at synthesis and sequencing. These are the technologies for manufacturing and reading DNA. We're looking at controller layer. I'll give you an example of that in the next slide, where we are looking at using DNA not just as a storage medium, but as a computational medium, where you can run computations directly in DNA using chemical reactions. We are looking at advanced access paths like file systems or block interfaces to DNA. And we are also looking at transcoding and encoding mechanisms, building on coding theory for converting data, be it structured databases or images or videos, into DNA. So more information about the project is available in the website that's listed here. Just to give you a quick overview of what we have accomplished so far, we have already shown that an end-to-end use case of using DNA as an archival medium is feasible. So to prove that, we have stored the image of Lena, which is an iconic image used in information theory. We have stored that, we have compressed it, and we have stored it in DNA in 800 single-stranded DNA oligonucleotides. Similarly, we have taken PostgreSQL, which is a very popular database engine. We have loaded it with a TPCH, which is a standard database benchmark. So we built a full database. We wrote tools to extract data from this database, convert it into oligos, DNA strands. We manufactured the DNA strands, which is 8 tables and 36 records for a total size of 12 kilobytes. It's not a lot, but we just wanted to prove the end-to-end use case. So we encoded it in DNA, recovered the data back from DNA and loaded it back into the database, all in all, and we verified that everything works. This proved that we could use DNA as a storage medium. As a computational medium, we also use the database to show that SQL operations like joins and selections that we would typically do in a computer. So most of us, some of you who have had exposure to databases, you have written SQL queries. We showed that some of these SQL queries can be converted into enzymatic reactions, biochemical reactions that you can run in a test tube on DNA. And the reason why we want to do it is we can tap the unlimited parallelism that comes from certain biochemical, biomolecular reactions when you run these SQL operations on DNA. So we also showed that near molecule data processing, that's the term we use, similar to near memory or near storage data processing, to make DNA not just a storage medium, but also a computational medium. So just to give to wrap up a quick update on where we are going with this project. In addition to looking at DNA as a medium for structured data, we're also started looking at the problem of preserving data for a long time using DNA. Very quickly to summarize, the problem is that most of the encoding methods rely on certain parameters and certain matrices which need to be preserved. Data is also compressed using compression formats and encryption formats, and the decompression algorithms need to be preserved. So what we have started working on in collaboration between Eurocom and Upalia with Vincent is actually bringing together emulation and DNA storage in order to achieve an end-to-end system that can provide high-capacity passive digital preservation. And we are always actively looking for collaborators to work with us, to test out our solutions and to give us feedback. So that's our presentation.
Great.
Thank you very much.
So we have time, I think, just for a quick question. Patricia, is there a question? I didn't see anything on chat.
No, I didn't see anything on the chat either. I must say this is such a new technology for me that I find it hard to understand how it works from a an archive, if you're an institution, how do you envisage that happening using DNA? What kind of infrastructure would you need to use something like DNA storage?
Right. So from the point of view of DNA storage, what we are trying to build in the project is the entire infrastructure in such a way that you don't see any of it, and you get the view just like the way you use tape drives today, for example. You get a very similar interface to DNA storage. So you won't be exposed to any of the internal infrastructure building blocks. You will get a REST API with which you can read and write objects, and that's about it.
But DNA storage is not for tomorrow.
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
So this is a blue sky project, right? So we're looking at 5 to 10 years down the line. So it's not something that's going to happen immediately. Yes.
But I think the COVID situation actually helps DNA research to progress faster, because it's actually useful for COVID research. So, for instance, in France, we have a company named DNA Script, which is actually working on DNA writing, because reading, as you know, sequencing is something that works very well now. But the problem is with writing, and they are making quicker progress now because their technology is useful for COVID research and things like that. So hopefully it's not in the too long term that we will be able to store our data on DNA.
Great. Thank you very much indeed, both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sharing your screen, and we'll hand over to Ivo.
Yeah.
You can take control. It's Ivo Branco, also giving an update in Amsterdam. You're in Portugal, right?
Yes.
Welcome, Portugal. And or I'll time it and give you a note when it's about 7.
Okay, so
go ahead.
I'm here to present the International Cross-Lingual Crawl of the European Parliamentary Elections 2019. We are the Arquivo.pt. The Arquivo.pt is a Portuguese web archive that has a research infrastructure that preserves historical web content. Arquivo.pt permanently selects archives and provides public access to its web content, web collections. So we have an open and free to use site that you can view and use what we preserve. And so we decided to crawl the European parliamentary elections like we normally done on every elections that occurs in Portugal. We decided to take this challenge to preserve this international event. Normally, the preservation of the World Wide Web has been delegated to every national institution, but this event is because it's different from the other ones because we have a transnational event. So we decided to create a collaborative initiative that we disseminated through the Portuguese in international contexts to request sites to be preserved. We sent them to the Arquivo.pt mailing list, social networks, and through the EPC mailing lists. We received 60 and 80 contributions from 16 countries, and Slovakia and Portugal were the top countries that we received those contributions. So to increase the coverage of the crawl, we decided to use automation of almost everything. So we have automation of translations and automation of the web search. So from the automation of the translations, we started with a couple of terms in Portuguese, and we translated them automatically using a Google Sheet, a spreadsheet. We're using a Google Translate formula to the other 24 official language of the European Union. And we also have a partnership with the Publications Office of the European Union that reviewed our translations. And with those matrix of those terms, we automatically query the search engine to get for each sentence the first 10 results. It's like automatically search every term or sentence on the web search engine and get all the 10 results that we normally execute when we search. We have a simple Python script with 50 lines of code that use the Bing Web Search API. And we think that this process could enable the expansion of the coverage of the information about the event to multiple countries and language without significantly increasing the amount of resources. So from a couple of sentences in Portuguese, we end up with many links to preserve and to crawl. We executed a couple of crawls, one before the elections, from using the collaborative lists, and only a couple of sentences that we search on the search engine, and we executed others after the elections. We started with the 12 terms per language on the 24 languages. And on the third crawl, we executed a manual revision, and we decided to increase the number of the terms that we search from 12 to 40. And we decided to run a high quality crawl for each seed. We used a browser to increase quality. We executed a single page crawl on each site. And we decided also to use the browser tricks for YouTube videos. And we decided to run a final crawl after a couple of weeks after the elections. So we could see the differences from the beginning and after the elections. So we have, if you go to arquivo.pt/EE 2019, you could perform a full text page search, an image search, and a page replay for the information that we collected. And we have 4.8 terabytes of data, and then 99 million of collected files. And you could also use the arquivo.pt API that is available for automatic processing. So collaborations with researchers interested in studying this web collection are welcome. So for conclusions, we think that using this method, we have combined human expertise plus automation to maximize coverage of a cross-lingual event using very limited amount of resources. So we think that this process can be applied easily to any kind of transnational event. We even also try to use on the coronavirus COVID-19 outbreak for the EEPC collaborative collection. We didn't use any automation on the translation, but we used the automation of the query web search engine, like Bing. We use the keyword coronavirus site /newssite.pt and use the first 10 results that for each one of the news site. So we end up with a spreadsheet with a query input on the first column, on the second 1 to 10, and the third the page URL, and the fourth column a page title, And so our web curator team member executed a revision of that spreadsheet and removed some sites. By default, used a single page crawl for each site, for each URL. And some you have increased the depth to plus one opt. So we think that this method of automation could increase the discovery of more sites and that are relevant for any kind of event. So
thank you, Ivo.
Thank you.
That's perfect. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So
we have a news and a full report of this event on the arquivo.pt/EE 2019, and if you follow the about this project link, you see the news about this, and also a full report that we also have our logs, crawl logs. So thank you.
Okay, super. Thank you. Don't think there are any questions. Lotte says she's ready to go. Should we move on, and then there'll be a little bit of time at the end for questions to all the speakers. So let's do that. So Lotte, if you want to share your screen, welcome, Lotte.
I will.
Lotte's from the National Archives of the Netherlands, and again, it's an update from work that was presented, I think, in a poster in Amsterdam. So Lotte, over to you.
Yes, can you all see the presentation? I assume.
Yep, it's good.
Yes, good. Okay, so my name is Lotte Wijsman, and today I will be talking about my research concerning the significant properties of spreadsheets, and my work is stakeholder analysis. So as we know, spreadsheets are often reliant on software that could become obsolete. And when this happens, we need to convert the file to another format. But when you convert an Excel file to PDF, a loss of information occurs. So for instance, we can see the outcome of the formula, but not the formula itself. And therefore, it is important to know what file format is best suited to ensure a maximum retention of spreadsheet properties. And as stated by Adam Farquhar and Angela Deppert in their paper, and they've just presented in stream 1, significance lies in the eye of the stakeholder. So to establish what the significant properties are that need to be preserved, the stakeholder analysis needs to be executed. And go to the next slide. Yes. So yes, my work was a continuation to the work that was done last year by the Open Preservation Foundation Archives Interest Group, who presented a poster on their object analysis to find out of what properties spreadsheet may consist. So at the beginning of my research, I was given this list and worked with it a bit. And finally, we got 334 properties. Please note that not every spreadsheet has 334 properties that are being used. In fact, it's mostly a small subset that is used. So these 334 properties can be divided in 2 ways. So you have the 21 groups, and those are groups like charts, tables, pivot tables. But we also have 5 categories: content, context, rendering, structure, and behavior. And these were taken from the InSpec framework report. So we have these 334 properties, and you can submerge them, which came out of this gigantic spreadsheet with the information. So you can see on the bottom right, an example of this, just one line. So you have the property, in this case, bubble chart, and that is submerged into the group charts and in the category rendering, because it has an influence on how it looks, how it appears. But of course, you can send a list of 334 properties to stakeholders and say, pick 5, what is significant. So what I did was 2 types of studies. So I did an explorative study, and this was mostly done to find out what the background of people was, their motivation, their knowledge level, just what is their motivation to use spreadsheet as well. And so we had these introductory questions, but also they were asked to submit representative spreadsheets. So what do they encounter in their daily working lives? And then, because if you see a spreadsheet that uses a lot of color, of course the stakeholder will say, yes, I find color to be very significant. But I also use these to use them for the spreadsheet complexity analyzer, which allows for analyzing at face value. This analyzer was created by Remco van Veenendaal, who is a member of the OPF AIG. I will talk a bit about that later on. And then I also did a formal study with a catalog and interviews, and these were more focused on the groups and what they really focus on concerning the properties themselves instead of background and motivation. So here we see an example of the catalog that I created. It's in 2 languages. On the left, it's Dutch, because the stakeholders were all Dutch. And then on the right, we have the English. So this is the group protection. And you can see that it has just 1 or 2 sentences mostly, just explaining what the group is about. Then some examples of the properties in that group. And then also a visual example, because people are oftentimes very visually, you know. And so it's in 2 languages, so it can also be used by other archives internationally. So every stakeholder was sent this catalog and asked, okay, pick 5 groups, why they're important to you. And this is also available on online. So I mentioned the spreadsheet complexity analyzer earlier. And if you analyze the spreadsheet, this is kind of what you get. So you see the size of the spreadsheet, but also how much formulas are used and how much cells are used. And that's very important to see because one of the most popular group, I will already tell you that, was formulas. That was picked the most. But for instance, there was one guy had a spreadsheet and that 2 million cells were used in the spreadsheet, but there were 0 formulas. And indeed, he was one of the few that didn't find the group formulas to be significant at all. And he also mentioned in the background information that he wasn't comfortable because his knowledge level was still very basic. So my findings, well, of course, I have a contribution of a methodology and toolbox that were created, but also there were some patterns. So for instance, if someone had more knowledge, there were people that said, yeah, I have an advanced knowledge level concerning spreadsheets. They were also more inclined to use pivot tables and formulas and choose those groups to be significant. And also we had some groups that people could say, are you a user maker or a manager? And the user makers naturally were more experienced, had more knowledge. So they were also more inclined to pick pivot tables and formulas to be important. And then, of course, we have the one size fits all was the question. Can we find one file format that will fit everybody's needs and have the maximum retention? The answer to that is no, actually, because while some features are crucial to the function of a certain spreadsheet, a different spreadsheet may not use those functions at all. And this is also due to the fact that spreadsheets inherently have a multitude of purposes. So how do we tailor the format to the functionality used is the question then, because one can find formulas very significant and the other doesn't use them at all. And then we come back to the spreadsheet complexity analyzer. We can assess the spreadsheet face value. So we can look at the components that are actually used in a specific spreadsheet to determine what is of importance and must therefore be preserved. And then these formats can be selected to fit different profiles that fit different file formats. And an important finding of my research was that looking to the face value of a spreadsheet is also a quick and accurate prediction of preservation intent of what people actually want to preserve. So by extending the use of the spreadsheet complexity analyzer, we can create the profiles that fit the formats, and then you can create a policy around that. So if anyone has any questions, I would love to hear them. I also included my email address at the bottom, and on the bottom right, you see a link to the paper as well with a persistent identifier. So it is for a long time endurance. So yeah, I would love to hear it if you have any questions. Thank you.
Great, perfectly on time. Thank you very much, Lotte. So questions?
There's nothing on the chat.
So maybe there's opportunity to ask questions, not just, do you want to stop sharing your screen, Lotte, perhaps?
Yes.
And the minutes to, if there's any questions that anyone has for any of the speakers. So if you go back, there's Lucy, Tobias, Vincent and Raja, Eva and Lotte. If there's any questions for anyone, then please feel free to, and in fact, we just jump on, unmute yourself and jump on if you'd like. No need to chat them. I had one actually for Lucy from myself. I wondered, all those automated processes are really impressive. Were they in place before COVID, or did you think them up really quickly in March?
We did have them in place before COVID, and then we have had to slightly tinker them just here and there, but they were pretty much set up before. So it was, a lot of it was basically ensuring that they were still working and with receipt of files, and that everything was seamlessly going through each step that was required.
Oh, I thought you had done it really on the fly. Really, that would have been truly amazing.
That would have been amazing. Yeah.
Other questions or something else you'd like to say that came up? If not, we'll close. But just a moment to. We have time.
I would like to ask Ivo a question, actually. So is the archive thinking of archiving more broadly on at an European level, or is this just a thought experiment?
We had other experiment of the crawl of the .eu domain a couple of years ago, but we don't have too much resources to store and to preserve a more broadly domains and our content. We could done it if we had more resources, but normally this is only a kind of experiment that we done. It's like a side project of our main goal that is preserve the Portuguese web. Normally we crawl the .pt domain and other sites that are relevant to the Portuguese community, like if some institution has a site on the .org domain or .com domain, we also crawl them if we know that links.
Thank you.
Thank you.
There is a question in the chat for me. I don't know if I can answer this for all. So the question for me is, have you ever dealt with any sort of 3D models, files at the German National Library? Is email integration suitable to emulate this type of data? So in principle, the emulation we use is just using existing emulation for different systems. So it's just a framework to automatically start an existing emulation for the fitting for the selected object. So if the object is a 3D model, then it needs an emulation with a software, a viewer or player to use these 3D models, and then of course it would work. So what we use is just a framework for existing emulations for different systems. The file object types are therefore not relevant as long as you have a suitable emulation with a suitable software within the emulation to use these file formats.
Okay, thank you. Oh, a question came in for Lucy. Can you see that, Patricia? Shall I read it? It says, Lucy, thank you for a great and concise sharing of the automated workflow do you or BFI have any of the details of these workflows written or published anywhere?
We don't, but please do get in touch and we can talk about it. My email address was on the slides, but
Want to put it into chat, perhaps?
yes, I shall put it into chat. Thank you. So yeah, please do get in touch, and we can talk it through further. Happy to do that. Spell.
Oh, there we go. Hey, from New Zealand, welcome. What on earth time is it in New Zealand? I forgot in the end, I didn't look at the time zones. I just thought I'd say, oh, it's not too bad. 10:30 in the evening, gosh. Okay, any last questions? Otherwise I'll...
Just a thought.
Sarah.
Sorry, I'll put my camera on so you can see my face. At the DPC, we're going to be developing a series of webinars on workflows and workflow sharing, ultimately sort of arriving at a point where we can, or we encourage participants to share their workflows into the community-owned workflow, the COW. And I just wondered whether that was something that might be appropriate if there's particular interest in yours, Lucy.
Mm-hmm.
Great stuff. We'll keep you posted about that then.
Perfect. Thanks.
Great. Then I'll close up. I wanted to first of all, I've got obviously to everyone to thank the speakers in particular. I noted it's great this because I had no idea what really. Said when it came in a couple of days ago what people will be talking about, but I think I've learned that automation is really good to have in place before a crisis. I think emailing Tim Cook I'm going to remember that one. That's good. And who knew about DNA storage? That's truly new. I'm going to Google that and see that. I think that's fantastic. And I actually really love that idea of auto translation. I always thought the Google Translator was interesting, and to see it used for something like this, I'd love to see a quality analysis, but I'm sure it's better than we think it is. I like that very much. And yeah, spreadsheet complexity analyzer. I love that. That's just, I'm going to find some way to bring that into a conversation somewhere. So thank you all very much indeed. Thanks to Lucy, Tobias, Vincent, Raja, Ivo and Lotte. Thanks also to Patricia, the co-chair, and to Sarah, who's been in the background dealing with my Wi-Fi went wobbly at one stage. So thank you for that. We've got a 15-minute break coming up. But before we do that, could I ask everyone who's on the call, please, to open up their video and unmute themselves and just give everyone a round of applause or click on the reactions or hoot or whatever you'd like to do. Thumbs up to everyone. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Well done, everyone. Cup of tea now.
Cup of tea, 15 minutes, and then we carry on. This is your moment. Perfect. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Okay, Sarah, happy with that?
Oh, you're muted, Sarah.
I'm muted. I'm in charge of unmuting people, and I'm
No, you're muted.
That was perfect. Thanks so much, Patricia, for your thoughtful questions at the appropriate moments. That was great. Oh, we've got thanks coming in on the YouTube chat as well. So that's
Gosh, yeah. Another feed.
trying to follow it all, and it's quite tricky. So I'm going to just pop this up for the moment, and then I don't know whether you guys are in this stream for the next one.
I haven't decided which stream I'm going to go in, but I'll.
Okay, right. I need to figure out who to call next.
Okay, well, I'm going to stop the video, get myself a cup of coffee. Thanks so much, Thanks, Patricia. That was great.
Thanks so much, Jonathan. That was brilliant. Well done for keeping us so very much to time. That was wonderful.
Yeah, well, I always think, when you finish slightly earlier, it's like giving people a little bit of their life back. It's always good to do. They've got 2 minutes they didn't think they'd have.
Yay.
I hope everyone uses it wisely.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Okay, bye. See you in the next one.
Bye,
Bye.
everybody.
Good afternoon, Sarah. My name is
Hello, Hans. How are you?
Hans Laagland. Yeah, and I will be the chair of the last session of the day. So I
Wonderful.
would like to introduce myself.
Thank you. Thank you for reporting for duty so promptly.
Yeah.
The co-chair is going to be Paul Wheatley, my colleague at DPC. So I'm just shuffling my screens to see if I can see the list of other speakers. It's a bit tricky to do that. It's all on my little screen. Let's have a look. So, right, I see. Right, so we've got Michelle Lindlar first. She wants to do something about pool with the polling function. So we'll see how we go with that. We'll just make her the co-host for that, just to let her do that, and then we'll switch that off once she's presented. I had a message from Frank Obermeit to say that he submitted a pre-recording.
Yep.
But I sort of got the impression he was going to be here in person as well. So we'll see.
There will still be an opportunity for questions.
Yeah. I'm just going to open that pre-record.
You call it.
I'll get that ready. Okay. And I think that's the only other point to note. So we'll just gather the others when they arrive.
Okay. Well, I would like to use this opportunity to make big compliments to you and an organizing committee for setting up this this We Miss IPRES festival in such a short time. So I think it's really impressive achievement. So I would like to say to you this.
Well, thank you. It's entirely a team effort. I don't think one of us could have done it by ourselves. So we've all mucked in and done our bit. But yeah, you're right. It has been put together very quickly, and in a sort of what we like to think is an agile fashion, but that means that we have a bit of permission to be kind of informal and have a bit of fun with it. It's not a very serious conference. But yeah, it seems to be working out well so far. So far, so good.
But there's also it also fills the gap of a need, because there's so many presentations and so many attendance of participants. So maybe you should consider doing this every 2 years or something. I don't know, because it's so very no. But of course we would also like to meet each other in person. But this is I'm getting all those new information which otherwise I wouldn't have, and that's really just because I'm sitting at home behind my computer, and then all this information, all this new context, and that's really that's a really good thing. So I suggest maybe we should do this more often than
yeah.
Well,
Great. Which streams have you been in so far?
I've been in stream 1, the digital preservation, and because I'm also preparing my own presentation, and I was preparing for this session. I think I will use the YouTube recordings to watch them.
Catch up.
Yeah, to catch up. Yeah.
Great. So what time do we start this one going again? 11:55. Okay, we've got a bit of time yet.
There's also a lot of there are also a lot of colleagues from the Netherlands in this stream.
Hi, Sarah. Hello, Hans.
Hello.
I'm a bit early, but
you're keen.
Yeah.
So this stream starts at 1, right? Or 12 for you? No, 2 and 1 for you, Sarah.
I just looked at the thing. 11. Have I got the right slide up?
No, 1 and 12 for you. It's probably like that something.
Yeah, it's 12:55.
Oh, 12:55. Okay.
Yeah.
So this slide is not right. Ooh.
I found that a very complicated slide, to be honest, with all the time zones and stuff.
I think I'll just take that down, just as
Quite confusing.
avoid confusion.
Yeah.
Alert your eyes. You didn't see that. People on the live stream, ignore. We do have a few people. 9 people watching on the live stream as we speak.
So can I just test the sharing of my screen?
That's fine for me.
Yeah. Let's see whether that works. Share. Can you see it?
Yeah.
Yep.
In presentation mode. It should go. There we are.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Works.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Perfectly.
Done. And is my partner in crime already there? No, she's not.
I have seen her this morning, but not.
Oh yeah, she's around, definitely. I've seen her as well, but not here yet.
I can see Nikki Lindlar.
Hey, so can I set up the poll thing?
Yeah, let's do that. Let me
Awesome.
give you that power.
Thank you.
See how that goes.
I'm nervous. It's gonna be a world premiere of this game. Where can I set up the poll?
If you go down to the bottom
It says security.
in more, under or above more, there's the 3 little dots, dot, dot, dot. And then the polls function is in there.
Oh, it might be hidden by the
So you might have to
participants list. 1 second.
make it big. And then it says, it asks you to add the questions.
Next to reactions. See.
No, I guess next to reactions, there's a more.
Ah, there it is.
Found it?
Yep, but I don't have the poll option. I have participants chats, and I can start and stop the recording.
Oh, right, hang on. Let's see if we can give you some more power in that case.
I need more power. I always need more power.
Right, I need to I don't know if I can do that. Because if I do that,
Can I send you the questions and you just set them up?
go on, let's do that.
So I could send them to you here in a private chat, I guess.
Yeah, I think if I was to make you host, it might interrupt the live stream.
You know, we won't want that.
And I've lost my chat box. Too many things.
My name is Hans Laagland, and I will chair this this stream, this session. I've already seen David Ungerdown joining.
Hi.
Hello. That is looking good. And we've already tested with Ingrid Dillo, so that's good as also. And now
I'm here as well, ready to co-chair with you, Hans.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Mickey, am I just saying question 1, question 2, question 3, whatever?
Is this poll 1, poll 2, poll 3, poll 4, poll 5, and then I can tell you which number it is based because I have the list here. It'll depend on how people choose.
Ooh, right, hang on. Oh god, this is polling on the fly.
If it doesn't work, we can do it through chat some way.
I also see Robert Gillissen. Welcome.
Yes, hi.
Hi.
I will be the last speaker of the session, I believe,
Yes.
together with Niels, Carmen, and Remco.
Yes.
I don't see them yet, but shall I already try and share my screen if it works?
It's okay if you would like to test.
Yeah.
Yes, please.
Let's see.
Yes. Yep.
Is that the one?
Yep. Y certification.
Now full screen?
Yes. Also.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Oh, it stops here. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Too many options in Zoom, really.
Then I've also seen Frank Overmaidt as a participant. That's also good.
Oh, yes, I can see him.
Yeah. And I can see, and I just heard Mickey Lindlar, so that's also good. So we're almost there.
Frank Overmaidt, can you just switch your camera on? Have you got one? Or unmute yourself?
Hello from Germany. This is
Hello, Germany.
Just the voice for Mr. Obermaidt because he's not so good at English, so he hired me to speak to you. We're online and watching.
Perfect. And I've got your pre-recorded video. You want me to play that, right?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay. And Mickey, I think the polls look like they're... I've literally never done this before, so I've loaded the questions. I'll press a button when you tell me, and we'll see what happens.
Perfect. We'll see.
What fun. What could go wrong?
You need to be able to think on your feet for digital preservation, right?
It's all part of the game. Okay.
Hans, can I already start to share my screen, or at least try, because I'm not quite sure which one of these many screens is going to react.
Yeah, if you would like to test it, it would be very welcome.
Thank you. Does that work?
Yeah, for me.
Perfect.
Yeah. So, good afternoon for Barbara Schierman.
Hello all.
Hello.
What's your background?
My background?
Yes.
And it's Marseille. Yeah.
Marseille. Okay.
Marseille.
Code red, I think.
Yeah, not when I took this picture. Let's see.
Stream the open.
Robert Gillissen, do you know whether Remco will join later?
Who are you looking for, Hans?
Yeah, I do surely hope so.
Yeah.
Because he will be my co-presenter.
Yes.
Is Niels there as well? Because I haven't seen him yet.
Well, Niels will join later, so he will not be present at the start, so he will join later.
Okay. Well, we're at the end of the session, so I hope they both join me. Otherwise, you have to listen to me for 10 minutes. It's not something that you might want to do.
Okay. Well, then it's 5 minutes to 1 in my time zone. If we're all ready, if Sarah and Paul are ready, I suggest we start. We will start. Welcome to session 3, stream 2. This is the stream picking up the threads from 2019 IPRES. What has happened with all the great insights and what plans we shared, and with the plans we shared at IPRES 2019. That's our stream. My name is Hans Laagland, and I'm from the Netherlands. Where I'm from, it's almost 1 o'clock in the afternoon. The co-chair is Paul Wheatley, and the technical leader is Sarah Middleton. Yeah. I would like to ask you to please turn camera and microphone off during the presentations. And I would like to ask you to use identifiable names on Zoom. If you have any comments or questions, they can be left in the chat box. And please also follow the chat, for example, for the links to the collaborative notes. We have 8-minute presentations. And after the presentation, there will be room for 1 or 2 questions. I think that's all for me for this moment. And I would like to introduce the first speaker from our first presentation. I would like to introduce you to Miki Lintar from the TYB Leibniz Information Center of Science and Technology. And the title of the presentation is "What's Your Plan? a preservation planning dialogue tree survey.
Thank you, Hans. Okay, let me see. So you should now see a desktop where it says just another day at the office. You've got mail. Is that correct?
Yes.
Perfect. So briefly about the motivation for this. I think as a digital preservation community, we've matured to a point where we now pick up again on old topics and strains like designated community or AS or preservation planning and look at the processes we've implemented so far and see if they work. And regarding preservation planning, I've noticed that a lot of people mention preservation planning. It's a topic that was very predominant at IPRES last year as well. But oftentimes we mean different things by that. So the game is just to briefly walk you through different kind of options that might lead to preservation planning. And the idea is to give an idea of paths that people may choose to actually arrive at a plan. So it starts with another day at the office and you've got mail. So we open the mail and it's a mail from the collections department to the digital preservation guru, that is you, saying that they've received a deposit from Dr. O.A. Ice, several publications with some research data, and they're ready to be archived as far as the collections department is concerned. So let's continue. So you have received the digital objects and have just deposited them into your digital preservation system. But what about a preservation plan? And Sarah, this is where I'd like you to bring up the poll number 1.
I'm having a poll fail. It's told me that I'm logged in from the wrong place. So we might have to do it by a show of hands, if that's all right, using those little reactions in the bottom.
Sure. Well, let me do this and let's do it by a show of hands for everybody who says we don't need a plan.
You can find your raise hands in the bottom. If you go to the little more sign underneath the participants list, you'll find a thumbs up, a thumbs down, a clap, a coffee cup.
Okay, that's very few. Then sign of hand for they always need a plan. That seems more. I wonder if that's wishful thinking or if that's actually reality. So let's say we always need a plan. So the next question is, how do you actually go about preservation planning? Do you have a workflow in your system that you actually use as the starting point for preservation planning? Or do you kind of start with a pen and paper approach where you have documentation or even policies like file format policies in place? So thumbs up for system workflow as the starting point. A couple. Thumbs up for documentation policies as the starting point. Okay, that's clearly more people, so we'll choose that route. So let's go down the road a little bit. 5 years have passed and you're so happy that you've had a plan all along. It feels good, doesn't it? So do you think that your plan actually needs to be reviewed now and updated, or is that something that you don't really have time and energy for? Thumbs up for those who would like to review the plan right now. Perfect. As a brief cross-check, thumbs up for those who don't have time or energy to review. Thank you for the honest answers. So let's review the plan. Right, so to revisit your plan, there's a question about your preservation planning policy. Does your preservation plan actually start at the file format level? So you have a preservation policy for PDF files or PDFA files or PDF A2B files or for docx files, or does it actually start at the collection level where you would have a policy for the deposit created by Dr. O.A. Ice? And that might actually group together different file formats. So a thumbs up for preservation policy on the file format level. Okay. Thumbs up for the collection level. It seems that most are actually in the file format level. So now it's time to actually test drive your preservation plan. I mean, we do need to run tests before we actually perform preservation action on our entire collection, right? So what do? You have two options. You can either run your preservation plan against a random sample of files that's selected pure randomly, or you actually have selected use cases that test against specific things that you defined beforehand. Thumbs up for random. Okay, thumbs up for selected use cases. Looks like selected use cases win. So, man, after all that work, you're now ready to turn your preservation plan into action. You want to save the legacy of Dr. OAIs, and saving that is now on your shoulders. But the question is, can you actually take the pressure? And do you have to take the pressure by yourself? Do you have a command line in place where you have the plan signed off by a superior, or is it all on you alone? Thumbs up for those who have a superior who signs off on the plan. Okay. Thumbs up for those who say it's all on them. Very good. Looks like most have a superior. So here's the summary of what the majority of you thought about preservation plans. For the plan trigger, you always want to have a plan in place. The plan is led by documentation and policies. You do want to regularly review it. Your starting granularity is usually at the file format level, and you want to test against selected use cases. Lastly, the plan authorized is by your command chain. So that brings you to the result. We love it when a plan comes together. It seems that you have successfully planned for the preservation of Dr. OAI's legacy. Congratulations. So you did everything right. As a teaser, there's two alternative endings to this game. So you can actually go and play it. It's built on Scratch. The link is not in here. I will send the link. I'll add the link to the collaborative notes. I thought it was in here. And if you have any feedback or comments, please write me an email or shout at me at Twitter. And there are some plans to actually extend this game in the future to have more use cases and also more options. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. I would like to give the floor for questions, please.
I don't think we've really had any questions in the chat box other than Barbara's asking about the, I guess the background to preservation planning, the lead into preservation planning, what might trigger it, the kind of preservation watch part. I guess that's more of a mention than a genuine question. Does anyone else have questions? I'm really excited to see you bring this topic up, Mickey, because it seems to go round and round, and we see developments in this area, but we don't really see uptake. We don't see anyone really going for it. I've not seen the evidence of that anyway. I kind of think back to experiences developing preservation planning tools on the Scape and the Planets project, resulting in the Plato tool, which seemed to solve this problem, at least part of the preservation planning problem, but it just doesn't seem to have seen uptake, which I've always been a bit surprised about.
Yeah, I think all digital preservation off-the-shelf systems have a preservation planning component, but they're quite different from each other, and so are implementations in institutions. So I kind of want to use this tool as a query tool to see what kind of routes people take.
That's exactly why I asked the question. Where is the preservation watch? Because in the Planets project, there was a stream of people who thought that you always needed to make a plan without any reason to do that, while another stream thought, well, you do your preservation watch, and in case you're worried about the results of your preservation watch, you're making a plan. So why should you make a plan if you don't know whether is if you haven't identified the risk to your collection or your file formats? While that's a waste of effort. And I think that's why people start with file formats, because there is a large community knowledge about the risk with file formats. So there you have a basis to create your plan. So that's why I was asking, where's Preservation Watch? I think it starts with Preservation Watch.
I think there's very fuzzy boundaries between Preservation Watch policies and planning as well. So what some people might consider preservation planning might actually be more of a policy.
Oh, okay. I think about that. Okay. Well, I have some fixed ideas, perhaps. Okay. Interesting topic.
Thanks.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for your presentation. And I would like to move on to the second presentation of this stream. It's a presentation of Frank Obermeid from the National Archives Saxony-Anhalt. And it's the presentation, the title is Concept of an OAIS Compliant Software Architecture.
Okay, can you all see that?
Yeah.
Dear colleagues, thank you very much for the opportunity to present the results of almost 3 years of work here. My name is Frank Obermeid. I'm a computer scientist by profession. Since 2011 I have been working on the topic of digital archiving in the German State Archive of Saxony-Anhalt, initiated by the participation in the German Development Association DIMAG. Before 2011 I worked for 35 years in computer centers. This year I wanted to present this lecture at the Arts Conference in Cologne, which was cancelled due to Corona. The content of the lecture was very compressed due to the time constraints. I will be glad to provide you with a complete lecture and a detailed script. In August 2017, I asked myself, is it possible to implement the OAIS reference model and software? The first findings were that the processes can be described with the OMG standard BPMN and the interfaces can be encapsulated on data and functions via REST. This brings us to the topic of the presentation. I presented the basic approach in detail at the Arts Conference in 2019 in Prague and described the core message of the lecture in one sentence. The core statement was, the archive storages are encapsulated with REST, the process modeling and the process processing is done with BPMN, everything is made available to the user via a web-based user interface, and the existing rights management is integrated. The initial question is, how can the OAIS reference model be structured in terms of software? There are the entities SIP, AIP and DIP. The AIP are managed and permanently stored in the archival storage. SIPs and DIPs also require storage. If we compare the requirements between AIP on the one hand and SIP and DIP on the other hand, the main difference is retention period. AIPs are stored long-term and SIPs and DIPs are stored more or less short-term. SIP, AIP and DIP can be addressed with UUIDs and URIs can be located. REST stands for Representational State Transfer and describes a programming paradigm for distributed systems, especially for web services. REST web services can be used to manage resources. Via REST web services, you can also data processing and editing operations are provided. Let's go back to the OAIS reference model. Behind the functional units, archival storage, ingest, preservation planning, data management, access and administration lie services and functions, but also workflows. At this point, the acronym BMN will be introduced. It stands for Business, Process, Model and Notation, and thus workflows can be modeled. Behind the acronym DMN is Decision Model and Notation, and thus decision rules are modeled. We completed the software technical structuring by encapsulating the data and functions using REST web services and linking them to workflows with BPMN. We can now turn to software architecture modeling in order to ultimately implement a flexible and maintainable framework based on this. Shortly shown where I found the architecture model template. The basic ideas behind the model are: the mentioned software architecture model template is two-dimensional and contains a domain-oriented and a technical dimension. Higher layers may use underlying layers. The model use contains the subject domain, application and presentation layers. Each layer is assigned tasks whose the semantic enrichment according to technical aspects is brought about. Each subject model contains parts of the technical layers. Previously, an infrastructure layer was modeled as an additional lowest technical layer, but this resulted in the dilemma that layers not directly above it were not allowed to use them directly either. Therefore, the previously common infrastructure layer is modeled as a cross-layer component. Each component has a presentation layer, yet the overall system should present itself to the user as a homogeneous unit. This task is performed by an integrating user interface. We transfer the previous structuring results to the architecture model template. We refer to the subject-specific layers as modules, and so far we have identified the three subject-specific modules SIP, AIP and DIP. These encapsulate data and services or functions and provide only the processing and handling functions. All functional units contain workflows and organizational instructions or rules that are assigned to the workflow component. There are functions that are required in all subject-specific components and are outsourced to an infrastructure component. The module must also do justice to the topic of data security. An identity and access management module is required. As already mentioned, an integrated surface is required. Thus, the model would be complete and all requirements of the OIS reference model could be implemented. The components of the model are based on standards. All modules work with UUIDs. The resources of the subject modules are localized by URIs. All components offer REST web services or the integrating interface processes them. OpenAPI is used for the documentation of the REST web services. The workflow modeling is based on BPMN and DMN. And for the identity and access management, the standards OAuth2 for authorization and OpenID Connect for authentication are applied. In the full version of the lecture, I will discuss some non-obvious aspects that the model takes into account. They include transaction security and authentication and authorization. I only show the slides for a short moment. With regard to the technical components and the infrastructure component, it is pointed out that these are almost identically structured. The workflow component considers the conversion of transaction in distributed systems. The authentications in the intranet and on the Internet are taken into account and the authorizations in the front-end and back-end areas. Now we come to the exciting question. Who is building this, or are there ready-made products for it? Yes, there are ready-made products. First, some of the principles and requirements applicable to the framework will be mentioned. In-house development should be kept to a minimum. The process design should also remain flexible in terms of technical implementation. The rights and rule concept should be realizable with the in-house user administration. The overall system should be horizontally and vertically scalable so that it can be used by small and large archives. The workflow module can be implemented with the open source product Camunda from the German company of the same name. The open source product Keycloak can be used for the IAM component. The tool's own user administration, LDAP directory services and other identity providers can be used. As far as the integrating interface is concerned, my favorite is called Application Express by Oracle, called APEX for short. You can develop web applications and an integrating user interface with little effort. In a nutshell, it can be said that the architecture consists of services orchestrated via workflows. The remaining slides are only in the complete lecture. Please write to me for further information. I would like to conclude the presentation with two quoted recommendations. Use open standards technologies to build modern web apps. Build to change instead of building to last. Please write me for further information about the presentation, the framework and the complete presentation. Thank you very much for your attention. That's it.
Thank you very much. Did I understand correctly that there was room for a question, or?
Yeah, we've not had any questions in the text box, but does anyone want to jump in with a question now? If not, maybe we should move on, Hans.
Yes, that's okay for me. Then I would like to introduce our next speaker. I would like to introduce David Unnerdown from the National Archives of the United Kingdom. And the title of the presentation is Introducing Diagram, the Digital Archiving Graphical Risk Assessment Model.
Hello, where do I find share screen? There we go. So I'm just getting sorted out. Right. Oh, share. Is that coming up for everyone?
We can see that you're sharing, but nothing. Oh, yes, there it is. Yeah, perfect.
Okay. Right. I have just popped a couple of links in the chat as well. So, hello everyone. I'm David Unnerdown. I'm a senior digital archivist at the National Archives in the UK. So I'm going to introduce you to Diagram, which is our risk modelling tool for digital preservation, picking up from what we told the community in Amsterdam last year. So just explaining how we've moved the project forward and how we've overcome some of the unexpected challenges, what it's about, how it might help you, what we've still got to do, or what's still in progress. So we, come on, left you with a poster in Amsterdam. You can see a bit of what's been happening via the Twitter hashtag and our project page, and the link to that's in chat. So the poster concluded with this illustration of some of the work we have been doing. So this was a test model. The probabilities and things here are illustrative. That was one of the issues. There was no real rigor in the probabilities we had at this stage. We needed statistical expertise. It only drew on our expertise at the Digital Archiving Department in the National Archives as well. So a bit of a risk that this type of modelling would only be useful to us. So we wanted to broaden the inputs and get a more widely applicable model. But let's just have a quick look at what we can do with this sort of thing. So even with this basic network, we can start to model scenarios. So here we've got data distributed over various storage media. So what would happen if we actually wanted to move that to different storage, but then we experience some sort of issue. So we can set that up, change that to storing everything on disk, but having some sort of high magnetic flux. We can see within that, as things have changed, that each storage medium has its own age distribution. We could look at adding additional mitigations to the network, such as fixture checking and terracopy for copy fidelity. We only saw, I'll go back to this in a second, we only saw a 0.6 percentage point change at the bottom, but when you've got 2 million files in our collection, then that is going to still affect a significant number of files in our collection in terms of renderability. Other things we would have to look at to develop this kind of model further. Temperature and humidity here are modeled as independent variables, but they might very well have an underlying cause, failure of air conditioning.
Other things we'd have to build in is actually the redundancy of different copies, and things like the complexities of data corruption, depending a bit on file format and information density. Correct compressed formats might be more susceptible to damage, but a bitflip might miss your actual files altogether if you're not storing things very densely. So just look at how that changes again back to the original sort of basic thing, and then how we move forward. You can just see the tiny change at the bottom and how the intermediate things go. So what happened next? How did we turn this into something real? We'd already been planning and developing a network of project partners. We'd talked to the Applied Statistics and Risk Unit at the University of Warwick, and had lined up 5 other archives in the UK, or England, strictly speaking. So following IPRES last year, we had a project development workshop funded by the National Archives in November. And that made quite a good start at putting together a more general digital preservation risk network. We submitted a bid to the National Lottery Heritage Fund. From that, we were awarded a grant of £93,500 in January 2020. The University of Warwick, the Applied Statistics and Risk Unit, had also got some funding from a Research Council Impact Acceleration account. So with that all in place, then we formally kicked off with a workshop at the end of January 2020. So that was building on the initial work we'd done, developing the actual network of risks and starting to find where people knew of actual quantitative data that we could start to plug into that to generate probabilities. And we also started some development work and changed the actual online tool, became the graphical risk assessment model, which is effectively the face of the project, safeguarding the nation's digital memory. Fortunately, due to an existing partnership, Warwick had 2 computing master students coming over from Australia on a sort of research exchange from Monash University, one from their main campus in Melbourne and one from the Malaysian campus. So they've designed the initial online tool. So within that, to customize the network to your own archive, there was kind of 9 areas that you answer questions on to just tighten the model to your situations, the breakdown between born digital assets and surrogates, and the type of storage and things. And then you can again do these kind of models of changing some of those and looking at how your risks change. So as everything this year, the best laid plans. We were planning a 2-day in-person event, had to work out how to turn that into an online event. Meant we didn't have any expenses to pay, so in fact we were able to bring in some additional experts. This was an expert elicitation. So what does that actually mean? So beforehand, we investigate, send out some questions that are the points of investigation to all the experts with some explanatory materials. They can go through those, decide what they think the related probabilities are. We come together, discuss that all together, look at the initial estimates that have been produced, talk about any major differences between those. Why are people less confident about the range in some area? Maybe they've just less experience in that, or there might be subtle different understandings of what the question was trying to ask. So following that discussion, which hopefully irons out some of those, we go and the estimates experts again go away and estimate, and the estimates are all done then sort of anonymously, so no one is sort of swayed by people having a particularly strong reputation or whatever, and other ways of trying to avoid bias. And with those final estimates, then we can aggregate those, bring in the probabilities. There are also some calibration questions hidden away in there, which allows us to judge the real standard of the experts, so we can potentially weight some higher than others. With those probabilities, we could then feed that into the model we developed, and we started getting the message out. So we ran 3 online workshops with DPC, and again, making a virtue of coronavirus and people working from home. We timed those to try and, like IPRES today, we tried to reach different parts of the world. Got some great feedback, both in terms of the reception of the tool, how useful people thought it might be, and specific suggestions for improvements. So we're now in a 3rd week of a 6-week mini project to act on that user interface feedback and make it easier to use. And so that's basically it. I have just put together the risk network at the bottom here. So we can see how we've determined that all the risks are linking together, and the link to the prototype. So that doesn't include any of the interface changes so far. And contact details there for any questions afterwards. That's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
We don't have any questions in the chat box, but does anyone want to jump in with a question? Give you a moment to do that.
It's not a question, but it's more an observation. I looked at your model of the risks, and if people talk about risk management, quite often it's a broad area. And I like the fact that you really focused on, let's say, the technical area, because your risks are identified not by the organization or budgets or whatever. You see the technical risks. And I think that's something you could emphasize more, because basically what you're saying, what is really digital preservation in the technical sense. That's what my thought was.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things is it was, I mean, as the sort of test model I showed, it's very easy to get really drawn into the technical side and try and model that, but actually that may not be the area where the biggest risks actually are. I mean, certainly the model, when we're looking at it, tends to show it's quite traditional archival things like improving your metadata handling and your information management that really make a big difference over time. So that was one of the things we didn't want to get sucked into that. I think, yeah, as we hopefully we'll be able to develop this model further, then we probably can deepen some of that modeling and make some of those areas more specific. That's one of the other advantages of the Bayesian approach, is you can kind of break out those individual nodes and turn each one into a submodel with its own modeling. But we only had, we started in January. We've got to be finished by kind of November. So we had to also choose something that was hopefully useful. It's more than a proof of concept, but it also had to be something that could be done in the time available. So we think it's sufficient. There's enough there to be useful, but there's definitely more that could be done as well.
No, I wasn't suggesting to do more, but I like the fact that you stick to a certain area. Okay, very good. Thank you.
Thanks, Barbara and David. I'll hand back to you, Hans.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I would like to. David has also put a link in the chat, so you can click on it and take a look at this as well. I would like to introduce the fourth presentation of this session. I would like to introduce Barbara Sierman from the digitalpreservation.nl, but I don't think I have to introduce Barbara. And I have to introduce Ingrid Dillo from DANS, Research Data Story. And the title of the presentation is A Matter of Trust.
So I hope you can see the slide. Dankjewel, Hans. Hello, everyone. Since a couple of years, the FAIR principles attract a lot of attention, and I'm sure that you all know them. They were intended as guidelines to improve the findability, accessibility, interoperability, and reuse of digital assets, not only for humans, also for machines. But the fairness of a data set is, of course, only a snapshot in time. The trust principles that we are presenting here build a bridge between the fairness of data and the long-term preservation of those data. Trust is definitely not meant to be a new standard. I want to make that very clear. Instead, it is really a set of guiding principles. And with these principles, we intend to promote a common framework to facilitate the discussion amongst the different stakeholders and the implementation of best practices in digital preservation. The idea for the trust principles was born in the context of Core Trust Seal, a community-based certification standard for repositories, and you will hear more about Core Trust Seal in the next presentation, I think. Under the umbrella of the Research Data Alliance, the principles were discussed over 2 plenaries by a large and varied community. And this resulted in a trust white paper, which in its turn formed again the basis of an article by 19 co-authors coming from 4 different continents and representing really a large variety both of stakeholder groups as well as scientific domains. Open science, our ultimate goal in a way, depends, I think, on 3 main pillars. First of all, we need open and transparent scientific practices and scientific integrity. We also need the data that come from that science to be fair, to allow validation and reuse. And we need trustworthy repositories to provide a long-term and stable home for those data. So let us now zoom in on this pillar of trustworthy digital repositories. Each letter in the TRUST acronym is important, and the order in which they are placed is important as well. Transparency is the starting point and foundation of trust. A repository needs to be transparent about the services and data holdings it provides, and their promises also need to be verifiable by publicly accessible evidence. And I think in that sense, trust between organizations is not different than trust between persons. Transparency and showing and what you do is very important. But with these promises also comes a responsibility. The repository needs to ensure the authenticity and integrity of its data holdings, and also the reliability and persistence of its services. Center stage in all of these principles are the users of the repository. In all its actions, the repository needs to make sure that it listens to its target user communities, and also that the data management norms and expectations of those users are met. And then we get to sustainability. Sustainability is important to be able to ensure access to the data holdings for the long term. And this sustainability is not only about securing funding, and that is something people very often think, but it's also about business continuity, things like risk mitigation, and about providing governance for the necessary long-term preservation of the data, so that the data resources remain over time discoverable, accessible, and usable. And then finally, we end with technology. A repository depends on the interaction of people, processes, and technologies. Its activities and functions are, of course, supported by software and hardware and technical services. And together, all of these provide the tools to enable the delivery of that trustworthiness that we are so desperately looking for. So the trust principles were published in May of this year, and they have been quite well received by the community. At the moment, they have already been endorsed by a large group of organizations around the world, and the article is also doing quite well, as you can see on this slide. And with this, I would like to hand over to my colleague, Barbara.
Yes, because I thought, what's in it for the IPRES community? Because the FAIR data are quite often associated with data repositories and not so much with libraries and archives. But I think, in my opinion, trust is expressively also important for the IPRES community. It's an attractive summary of what we all try to achieve. And the word trust and the message behind each letter are important and relevant for all of us. It's more generic than only for data repositories. It's for all kinds of repositories, and it supports in a nice way your efforts. As you can see, and as Ingrid showed, it's acknowledged and endorsed by large organizations around the globe. And this will mean that more and more people are aware of preservation. So I think the IPRES community should support the trust principles. Some of the people contributed to the article. But I would first like to invite you to read the article. The DOI is in the chat box, but you can also see it here. And what you also can do, if you agree with the principle, please endorse. Show that you as an organization agree with that. Amongst the endorsers are, for example, in the preservation community, the Dutch Digital Heritage Network. So that's a good example of doing it. But you can also contribute. The Research Data Alliance is open to everyone. It doesn't cost anything, so you can join and in a discussion. In the next RDA plenary in November, we will be discussing to start a working group for the trust principles, so you can join if you want. That was my last call for action. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
We haven't got any questions in the chat box, but does anyone want to jump in?
Well, I was curious because in this stream we have a lot of colleagues from the IPRES community. So maybe we have some first thoughts about the trust principles for the IPRES community, as Barbara suggested. So maybe we should first read the article. That's of course also a possibility. I'm just a little bit too quick. That's also.
Well, maybe I can add one comment if we have a moment.
Yeah.
Give a little bit of context again, in a sense that those trust principles, of course, seem to have a relationship with the core trust seal, the certification standard for repositories, not only data repositories, but repositories in general. And we will hear more about that. So on the one hand, you can see those trust principles as a kind of overarching principles to facilitate discussion. So they could very well be a first step for any repository to start a discussion within the Institute about the importance of preservation. So you could see them as a kind of portal towards eventually maybe a formal certification, but that doesn't necessarily have to happen even. It's really a tool to start the conversation. And in that sense, I think it might be of interest for a large variety of institutions, and certainly not only scientific ones or repositories dealing with data from science.
No. Okay.
I think just in the chat box, Andrew had a similar thought, Ingrid, and certainly it's something that we've been thinking about at DPC in relation to the DPC RAM maturity model. And we've had very quick conversations at the last IPRES with Barbara and colleagues there as well. But that's something we'd like to look at, I think, for the next revision of that.
And I also like the comment that Natalie makes, that there is also a relationship, of course, with FAIR, because FAIR, you know, is a snapshot. But if you want to keep your data FAIR, you need to, you would prefer to put them in a trustworthy digital repository. So this is also a nice linkage between the two. They're both important, but they fly in from really different angles.
Okay, well, I would like to conclude this presentation, and we'll continue to our last presentation of today. I would like to introduce Robert Gillissen from the International Institute of Social History. I would like to introduce Remco van Veenendaal from the National Archives of the Netherlands. And I would like to introduce Niels Komen from the Regional Archives of Zetland. And the title of the presentation is Many Different Roads Lead to Rome, Experiences of 3 Dutch Archives Recently Acquiring a Core Trust Seal.
Hi everyone, my name is Robert Gillissen. As Hans already said, I'm a digital archivist at the International Institute of Social History. A short introduction to my co-presenters, Remco and Niels. Well, Hans already did that, but also a bit about the Core Trust Seal. Ingrid mentioned it already. It's For those of you who don't know what it is, it's a peer-reviewed certification label for digital repositories. It began with mostly with data research institutes, but now it's more and more used by cultural heritage institutes like we are. We are 3 archives. So what we want to do is share our knowledge because we share our experiences of recently acquiring a core trust seal, which we did. We received it very recently, even in July, but in Zutphen they got it in 2020, in the National Archives a year before. So to begin, we all gonna share our experiences. I want to begin with Remco. The floor is yours, Remco.
Well, thank you very much. Yeah, what I would like to do is zoom in on 3 tips from the National Archives of the Netherlands. This is a short summary of a larger presentation I gave at the DLM forum with 8 tips, but the link to that one is in the presentation. So the first thing to do, and you could use the trust and fair principles for that perhaps, is to look before you leap, because you want to know why you want to get certified. You need to team up and get management support and perhaps even investigate if you are ready for certification. Another one is to take the time, or to take enough time, because you need to prepare your application, to write it, edit it, do some translation work. And in our case, it took about 2 years to actually go from establishing the first team to the first submission. And then you need time for responding to the feedback from the 2 anonymous reviewers. And in our case, that took another 2 years from the first submission to actually becoming Core Trust Seal certified. And I'll get back to that a bit later. Also, certification is just a snapshot, and it's valid for 3 years. So you want to have some kind of quality management process in your organization in order to ensure that in those 3 years, you will be able to get another certificate, or perhaps at a higher level. And in our case, we are currently implementing a quality management process using maturity models like DPCMM and DPC-RAM. That was already mentioned by Paul. Next slide. The most important thing we learned, and this is also something that Core Trust Seal itself is still working on, is about scope and designated communities. Because what is actually in scope for your certification? Who are your designated communities as opposed to your user communities? You need to think about this very carefully. So yeah, let's just go to the next slide so I can give the other presenters enough time to present their stuff. Feel free to visit these links to get more information on our certification, documentation, and even more tips that I presented at the DLM forum. Or send me an email. The email is there, and feel free to do that. So I'll hand over to Niels now.
Thank you, Remco. My organization is also a digital archive, but we have a local function, whereas the National Archive has a nationwide function. And we serve the town of Zutphen and some villages surrounding it. The why, our main objective is to have and to maintain a trustworthy digital repository for both our depositors and for the public. These are our designated communities, and the Core Trust Seal is proof of that trustworthiness. So that's in short why we applied, to let them see that, that we are trustworthy. The obstacles we faced, the process took a lot of time, something Remco also managed. That had to do with information we had to gather and improvements we had to make in our organization. And in our case, it also had to do with the renewal of the requirements. Because of that, the application tool was temporarily closed. And I think the entire process took us about a year or a year and a half. And what I always find difficult in these sorts of assessment tools is, when is your answer objectively good enough? What standards does it have to meet? And for some requirements that is clear, but for others it was not so clear for us. So what we did was a lot of comparison with other organizations who already obtained the Core Trust Seal. And we especially looked at the National Archive, of course. And the lessons we learned, and the recommendation I can give you is just to go for it. You can first self-assess and determine what steps you have to take. And when you think it's about good enough, apply and you will see how you're doing. You always get a chance to, you get feedback and then you have the chance to submit it again. So you have nothing to lose, you can just learn from it. Can you put to the next slide, please? Well, if you want to know more about the steps we took, about our process, you can look at these links, our full application, and also our supporting documentation. That is in Dutch, however. And you can always contact me. I don't see my email address here, but I can put it in the chat. And with that, I ask Robert to step in from this point.
Yeah, thanks, Niels and Remco. So again, I'm from the International Institute of Social History. Why did we want a certification for our digital repository? Well, we were a bit different than the two archives before. We are a private archive, so there's no obligatory, there's no donor of us that has to give their archives to us. So why is a certification then important for us? Well, to begin with, it was for strategic reasons. Being a research institute and archive of some national and international renown, and also being part of the Dutch Academy of Sciences, the ISSH management thought it was very important to have such a seal for our digital repository. But by far the most importantly, again, we were a private archive, so we saw that our archival donors really have to have trust in us. So this Core Trust Seal is a really important means to prove that trustworthiness of our digital repository. So a few of the obstacles that we run into, they are a bit comparable to the ones you've heard before, also a matter of time and of priority in our case. There were many things happening in the last couple of years, and the certification process was not always on the highest scale. Also, we've been working very hard of renewing our digital infrastructure during the certification process, so that had a bit of a unwanted effects that sometimes when you've written something down, it was already outdated a few months later. So that happens. And also what we underestimated a little bit, I think it was that the amount of documentation that needed to be revised or newly written. It was quite a lot of work to do. So some lessons that we learned, I think a more time concentrated effort would have been more efficient, and it's surely what we want to do next time and when we want to renew our Core Trust Seal in 3 years' time. Also, what we noticed that when you give really comprehensive answers, which we did sometimes, the elicited more critical questions from the reviewers. So you have to really find a balance between being comprehensive and being concise, because you can look at how other people gave answers to the different questions within the Core Trust Seal. Also, maybe the most important lesson I think is that it's really important to get your colleagues involved, spread the responsibility of the Core Trust Seal within the organization. So not only keep it to a small group, but make it really a wide effort within your organization is a really wise thing to do. So also, our application is also to be found online with it, and also a lot of documentation, which I told you before, is also online, most in English, and also written a blog about the process of certification. And my email address is there as well, if you want to contact me. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much.
We have a question from Barbara Seaman. Did someone ask you why you did not start with ISO certification?
Then the question is, who shall answer that? So shall I begin?
I'll try as well.
Yeah. Well, the ISO, I think, was by far too ambitious for us. Core Trust Seal was, as probably most of you know, is a little bit easier to do. Not that it is easy peasy, but it's, yeah, the ISO standard, ISO 16363, is something of another level, and which doesn't fit our organization at the moment, I think.
In our case, we decided simply to follow the guidelines from the Dutch Digital Heritage Network and the broader European community around certification, where you have this stepwise progression in certification, starting with Core Trust Seal, ending with ISO. And we wanted to practice what we preach within the Dutch Digital Heritage Network. So we decided to start with the Core Trust Seal, and we'll see if we can eventually move up the ladder and get higher level certification in place.
Yeah, if there are no other questions.
I posted a question in the chat.
Yeah, okay.
Ingrid, above or before Barbara.
Go ahead, Ingrid, ask the question.
It's about the balance between the
yeah,
and the benefit.
I wanted to know, you know, what you have put into it, because I hear about certain struggles that you had, and you say something about the reasons why you did it. But I would also be now looking back, be interested in whether the effort that you had to put in weighed against the benefit that you now perceive, and is it benefit mainly external or also internal?
Maybe it's a bit early because we just received it in July, to be exact. But yeah, I think it's both. By far for us, I think the external benefit should be the biggest, because the reason why we actually done the Core Trust Seal, for our funders, for our donors, for being part of the Dutch Academy of Sciences, is mostly external, but also internal, because also we want to do it for ourselves. But that's also an important thing about certification. Of course, it's the thing you show to the outside world, but also you want to review your own organization and your own repository and see how you are doing. Because in our case, we've done all this renewing of our systems, implementing Archivematica, for instance. Also, it was very important for ourselves to do this, to see how are we performing. So, and also the Core Trust Seal is a grow model. Next time you will do better, hopefully. So yeah, it's both.
We have another question from Mickey Lindlar. Nestor Seal certifies at the granularity level of the workflow versus the entire archive. So she asks, do you find value in that?
That's a good question. In our case, the next step might be to go for the Nestor Seal. But I think we haven't actually investigated the requirements for Nestor good enough at this moment to see this distinction between the two approaches. So I can't really say anything about that yet. Also about the return on investment, we haven't done any calculations on that, but it did strike me that we had a nice internal question when we started, which was, why do we want certification anyway? And we have some good reasons, we mentioned them, but we're National Archives, right? If you can't trust us, who can you trust? But yeah, the simple answer was, of course, this is something that we can say about ourselves, that you can trust us, but we want someone else to show that we are trustworthy as well. And that was one of the most, the big reasons to go for certification too.
Thanks, guys. So we've just got a couple of minutes left. So if you've got any more questions for any of the presenters from this session, please tap them into the chat box. But maybe we can just go back. I don't know if we still have Frank with us and if he's actually able to answer a question, but we had a question from Andrea Gotals. really asking sort of the contextual question, the background question to Frank's presentation. Why was it decided to actually design the new platform that the presentation focused on? Was there a particular purpose, a particular challenge being taken on there? Are you able to come in, Frank? Maybe not. I think I saw him still in the list of participants.
I think he's there, Paul, but not confident in speaking.
He might be struggling. Yeah,
English.
no
Perhaps
problem.
that's something we can follow up with him afterwards.
Yeah. Well, I had a question back from Remco to the crowd. Who of you are preparing Quartus Seal or have obtained Quartus Seal? Any important lessons learned to share here? That would be brilliant. I mean, it was great to hear those lessons learned. I mean, I really love that presentation. We certainly learned a lot from that. I think it's great to share those experiences for us who are maybe thinking about Quartus Seal. But yeah, please dive in and add some further lessons learned if you've got them, guys. Any final questions? We've just got a minute left. And then I think we're going to wrap things up with a social.
Yeah, I would like to ask for a warm applause for all our speakers. So maybe we can, yeah. And well, this is our final session of today, and this stream will shut. And I would kindly invite you to the social and community get together, which will start exactly now. And then we have to change to another stream, and you will have the organizing committee has given you a link for the right stream. So thank you very much, and goodbye.
Thanks. Bye, everyone.
Thanks, the link is in the chat box for the next session.
Here.
Cheers, everybody.
Thanks, Hans. That was great. Good chairing.
You're welcome. I forgot to thank you and Paul for the.
I'll thank him later.
Okay, I forgot to thank you and Paul for technique and for the co-chair. Okay. I'll just hop to the other stream.
Yeah, we'll all go now. See you now.